Monogatari series by Nisio Ease and cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audiobooks, please check out our website, artale.ai. Now, enjoy the story.
Though the tale of Tsubasa Hanekawa is my tale, it is not one that I can tell. That's because I can't even define the extent to which I am me. I believe there was once a great author who said he found it hard to believe that he was himself down to the tips of his outstretched toes, but I don't even need to extend my legs. It's uncertain whether my very heart is my own. Am I me? What am I? Who am I? Who is me? What is me? For example, could we really say that I am these thoughts that so closely consider this pointlessness? Maybe we could say that. If we're only going to say it, these are only feelings, thoughts, and maybe even memories. But we might say that they're nothing more than accumulated knowledge. If we're saying that I am my experiences, does that mean we can also say a human with the exact same experiences as me would actually be me? That there could be a me other than me that was still me? In that case, if I were being unlike myself, would I no longer be me? What to think about that? How to feel? To begin with, the name Tsubasa Hanekawa is already unstable. My family name has changed a number of times. So I can't look for my identity in my name, not even a bit. I understand on quite a deep-rooted level the idea that names are nothing more than signifiers. We could even say I understand it on a bodily level. In facing an aberration, nothing is more important than knowing its name, or at least, that's supposed to be the first step in the process. So maybe the fact that I never recognized my name as my own was a major reason I haven't been facing myself. In that case, I need to begin by knowing my name. I need to know Tsubasa Hanekawa as myself. Then maybe I can define myself for the first time. Of course, when I think about how Araragi most likely doesn't worry himself into a standstill with these kinds of ideas, my self-imposed stalemate seems silly and absurd. He can become a vampire, loses humanity, and be dragged into the other world by a host of different aberrations, but he always continues to be Koyomi Araragi, with his unshakable self, his unshakable ego, and I feel embarrassed when I think about that. Maybe he doesn't realize it. It's clear to anyone around him, as clear as day, that he always continues to be himself, no matter the place or time. But just maybe he doesn't realize it. He doesn't have to realize it. Koyomi Araragi can be Koyomi Araragi in confidence. That's probably why he can always tell his own tale. That's why I love him. Tsubasa Hanekawa loves Koyomi Araragi. In the end, any me. Amusingly enough, that is the only certain thing in me. Like when I'm studying alone at a library desk and suddenly decide to write the name Koyomi Araragi in the corner of my notes and can't help but smile. That is all my tale needs to be. Of all 60 stories about the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, the famed detective created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, only 2 shorts exist that are narrated not by his assistant, Dr. Watson, but by Sherlock Holmes himself. These are controversial works among Sherlockians, even treated as apocryphal at times, but in one of them, The Adventure of the Blanched Soldier, Mr. Holmes begins with these words, "The ideas of my friend Watson, though limited, are exceedingly pertinacious. For a long time he has worried me to write an experience of my own. Perhaps I have rather invited this persecution, since I have often had occasion to point out to him how superficial are his own accounts, and to accuse him of pandering to popular taste instead of confining himself rigidly to fact and figures. Try it yourself, Holmes," he has retorted, and I am compelled to admit that having taken my pen in my hand, I do begin to realize that the matter must be presented in such a way as may interest the reader. Like most, I was fascinated by Sherlock Holmes's near-superhuman abilities as I read about his exploits, which is why I was taken aback when he abruptly gave voice to these true feelings. To be frank, I was disappointed. Why would this man who had made one extraordinary display after another now choose to say such a human thing? I felt betrayed. But now I understand. I understand his humanity, which could no longer bear the gap between him as the Superman spoken of by Dr. Watson, and him as himself. His feelings of wanting to make an excuse for himself. Ultimately, those 2 stories are positioned as the outcome of a renowned detective's assistant talking back to him. Then why don't you write it yourself? Let me say here from the start that this tale is the same for me. A tale to let you know that contrary to Aragi's portrayals of me as some kind of historical saint or holy mother, I am but a human being. To let you know that I am a cat and that I am a tiger, and that I am a person. A tale of betrayal made to let everyone down. I don't think I'll be able to tell it well, the way Aragi can, but I'd like to play it by ear and try my best. I imagine that's the way anyone would talk about his or her own life. Now, the time has come to wake from this nightmare. Rumor has it that Araragi dutifully gets woken up every morning by his little sisters Karen and Tsukihihi, that their efforts are tireless regardless of whether it's a weekday, weekend, or holiday. He seems quite bothered by it, but from where I stand, they just sound like close siblings to me. Actually, I'm just plain jealous. Honestly, truly, how many older brothers exist in this world so loved they're woken up each and every morning? But more than anything, it may not be Aragi himself I'm jealous of here, but Karen and Tsukihi, who get to see his sleeping face every day. Really, jealous as can be. Honestly, truly. So, how do I, Tsubasa Hanekawa, get up each morning? Just as Araragi has his sisters, Roomba wakes me up every morning. Of course, Roomba isn't the Hanekawa family cat nor the eccentric name of little sister Roomba Hanekawa. It is indeed simply the automatic vacuum made by iRobot, the Roomba 577 if you were to call it by its model number. This high-performance vacuum cleaner, timer set to go into action automatically at 6 each morning, clunks into my head and wakes me up. A refreshing start. Still, Roomba generates a good bit of noise while it cleans, as all vacuums do, so really I'm awake by the time it creeps down the hallway toward me. And yet I keep my eyes closed, waiting for that clonk to come, not getting up until my head is bumped, perhaps because I yearn for that feeling of someone waking me up, that feeling of being woken up. Like I'm Sleeping Beauty, to put it poetically. Well, no, nothing about the situation could be poetic when it's a vacuum cleaner waking me up. Sleeping Beauty. Did I really just say that about myself? I must be nothing more than a nuisance from Roomba's perspective. Some sleeping person blocking the hallway it's cleaning. That's right. I sleep in the hallway. I sleep on a futon in the second floor hallway of a house. I used to think it's normal and utterly natural, but apparently it isn't. Ever since I unwittingly talked about this and lost a friend, I've made it a point not to discuss the matter too openly. Even then, I don't particularly desire my own bed. Not after all this time. It's become natural. I don't want to change what's natural. I never had the childish thought of wanting my own room. And you know, I did talk about this with my classmate, Miss Senjo Gahara, after we became friends, because it felt like it would be okay to tell her.
Hey, that's nothing. My place doesn't even have a hallway.
Maybe it seemed like a first world problem to Miss Senjo Gahara, who lives with her father in a one-room apartment, and I didn't see it as a problem in the first place. No, maybe I'm wrong. To take a guess, perhaps I don't want this house to become my place. Like the opposite of how an animal marks its territory, maybe I want to distance myself from this house. Not even a trace. Not leaving any whatsoever at this house. Maybe that's what it is. Let's put aside why I'm having to take guesses about my own heart and mind, or why I can only say, perhaps, and maybe. Well, however I feel about it, it's not going to matter a few months from now, so I should try not to think too much. I say to myself as I fold my futon, I don't have much trouble getting up in the morning. In fact, I don't really understand what it feels like to be still asleep after waking up. My consciousness being on or off is, in my case, probably more clear-cut than it needs to be. If you feel sleepy, then just sleep. That's what I end up thinking. That must be where I don't match up with other people. Araragi tells me things like, what you find only natural to be able to do is nothing less than a miracle for me all the time, but miracle is going too far, isn't it? I continue to talk to myself. I don't do it when I'm outside, but I can't keep from talking to myself when I'm in the house, because if I don't, I feel like I'd forget how to speak. I do think that's an issue. I also think it's an issue that I naturally begin to smile when I think of Araragi as I speak to myself. I place my futon in the closet and go to the bathroom to wash my face. Then I put in my contact lenses. Back when I wore glasses, I was so terrified of sticking lenses directly onto my eyeballs that I didn't even want to consider the idea. And when I first started using them, I was indeed so terrified that I practically kept my eyes closed throughout the whole ordeal. That's a figure of speech, but now that I'm used to it, it's no problem at all. We can get accustomed to anything. In fact, with the burden lifted off of my nose and ears, it's more comfortable. When I think of my future starting next year, though, whether it's contact lenses or glasses, I'll be hindered in a way. I've been wondering lately if I should just be brave and go through with LASIK surgery while I'm still a student.
After making myself look presentable, I head to the dining room. There, someone who should be called my father and someone who should be called my mother are, as always, eating breakfast separately at the same table. They don't even look at me as I enter. I don't even look at them, either. Something entering your field of vision doesn't mean you've looked. The heart's eyes can always be averted. It may be hard to see with the heart, but it is easy not to. The only sound to echo through the dining room is the voice of the TV anchor reporting the day's top.
Why, the news anchor surely at a distant television station feels closer to me than these two persons in the same room. Why, indeed. To the point that I want to greet her with a good momming. Speaking of which, how many years was it since I last uttered the words good morning in this house? I tried searching through my memories only to come up with nothing. I did remember saying good morning to Roomba 5 times, as mentioned earlier, not just mumbling in my sleep, but plainly. There's something oddly alive about the way that automatic cleaner moves. But I seriously couldn't recall a single time I said it to the persons who should be called my father and my mother. Not even once. Ha. That is surprising. I once said to Araragi something like, I think for my part I've tried to meet my parents halfway, but it seems those words weren't truthful. Then again, it's not like everything that comes out of my mouth being a lie is an existence far from the truth. That is who I, Tsubasa Hanekawa, am. Even my family name is a sham. I close the door without a sound and head to the kitchen, not the table. To make breakfast? Yes, but that isn't to say I don't feel like delaying for as long as possible the moment when I have to approach the table where those two sat. I know resistance is futile, or rather, empty. Allow me that degree of resistance. Even so, it's not exactly a coup d'etat. The Hanekawa's kitchen, which I would personally prefer not to call my homes, has a lot of cookware. It also has 3 each of milk pans and frying pans. That is to say, there is 3 of everything. If you want to know what this means, then yes, the 3 of us living in the house each use our own separate sets of cookware. This is another anecdote whose telling lost me a friend. I have too many of these kinds of anecdotes to count, like how we each prepare our own bath and then drain the tub for it to be refilled, or how we do our laundry separately, but it's strange. I don't find any of this odd, and no matter how many friends I lose, I don't feel like the Hanekawa household ought to adopt the ways of other homes. Since we leave the house at about the same hour, our breakfast times happen to coincide. But it's like finding seats at the same table in a cafeteria. There is no conversation, and none of us ever makes breakfast for the other two while we are at it preparing our own. I select my personal cookware and commence my domestic chore. But I don't make an elaborate breakfast like that wording might suggest. I dish out the single serving of rice I cooked, prepare my miso soup, rolled omelet, grilled fish, and salad. I'm told that's too much, but I'm the type to go for hearty breakfasts, and ferry it to the table over 3 trips. And ferry it to the table over 3 trips. I then take one last round trip to pour myself some tea. There'd be no need for 4.5 round trips if someone helped me. But of course no one in this house does. Even Roomba doesn't help out to that extent. I sit down thinking how nice it'd be if Araragi were around to help me. Thank you for this meal, I say, putting my hands together and pick up my chopsticks. I've never heard the other two mouth those words. Nonetheless, while I don't say good morning or good night, I seldom fail to show my thanks before and after a meal. Especially after spring break, not even once since then. After all, the words are for the plants and animals that will become my flesh and blood, once alive before they were made into food, lives killed for my sake of all creatures. Thank you. I humbly accept you. I finished eating breakfast, changed from my pajamas into my school uniform, and immediately left the house. I understand it takes Araragi about 80 pages to leave his home, but that's all I need. It seems clear this is the difference between having a family that won't let you leave your room and not having one. Anyway, today was the start of a new term at school. It was a relief to know that. It felt, from the bottom of my heart, like I'd been saved. I felt like I owed my life to each new trimester that came along. Days off are days for walking, but even then, there's only so much wandering one can do. I could even put a delinquent to shame. While acting as Araragi's private college exam tutor was, in some sense, something I did to improve his grades, it must have also been a handy excuse for not returning to my house, which is why having school was a relief. I let out a sigh of relief. Then again, it didn't matter. Walking around being a home tutor, going to school. In any case, I would always have to return to that house in the end, and nothing could depress me more. And yes, the act I'm describing is strictly returning to that house and not going home. Tidal and Matil realize in the end that the bluebird of happiness was at home all along. But where should someone with no home go to seek it out? Should she be seeking not a bluebird, but, say, a white cat? Anyway, if you'll allow me to say something a little negative, even if the bluebird of happiness is at your own home, that doesn't mean a beast of unhappiness isn't lurking there too.
As I walked pondering such thoughts, why, if it wasn't a little girl with pigtails appearing in my way.
My goodness. Yes, silly Willy.
The little girl Maoi Hachikuji turned around and approached me with a charming trot. Every move she made was just too adorable. I wondered how aware she was that her cuteness drove Aragi mad.
It seems like classes are resuming today, Miss Hanekawa.
Yup, that's right.
Applying yourself to your studies really is extraordinarily taxing. I may only be an elementary schooler, but I, too, spend my days overcoming one trial after tribulation. You could even call the crushing amount of coursework I faced during summer break its own kind of military history.
So what are you doing now, Mayoi?
Searching for Mr. Aragi.
My goodness. Now it was my turn to use the line. I could understand Araragi wandering around in search of Mayoi, but the opposite was truly rare. No, had something similar happened before? I wanted to say that Shinobu had gone missing, then could something like it have happened again?
Oh no, it isn't as if anything serious has happened. It's only that I forgot a little something at Mr. Araragi's home, and I was hoping to have him return it to me.
You forgot something?
Just look!
Mayoi presented me with her back. I couldn't find anything to look at there other than a cute little back, but when I gave it some more thought, the fact that there was nothing there was the strange part. What was charming about Mayoi was the big backpack she wore no matter where or when. That backpack was absent. What was up?
Hold on. Mayoi, did you just say that you forgot something at Araragi's house?
That's right. He hauled me there yesterday, and then carelessly forgot my backpack then.
Hold?
Forcibly hauled.
You're making it sound even more criminal?
I decided not to pursue the matter any further. If I asked again, she might say she was assaulted. Whatever the case, Mayoi seemed to have forgotten her backpack at Aragi's home. What a bold thing to forget.
In that case, why don't you just go to Araragi's?
Her coordinates were all wrong. Why was she here?
I, of course, began by visiting the gentleman's home, but he seemed to have already left, and his bike was nowhere to be found.
Does Aragi leave for school this early, though? Or he must have finished having something very important to do and hasn't come home since last night.
It wasn't that he left early. Maybe he hadn't come home yet.
Ha! The thought never occurred to me. I should have known I could count on you for an impressive feat of inference. Yes, that is a possibility. Perhaps an intractable case came up after I somehow managed to flee from Mr. Aragi's home.
Yeah.
I decided to ignore the fraught, already plenty intractable somehow managed to flee. Pursuing it any further felt like it might shine a light on a lot of regrettable facts.
But whatever the case, it seems unlikely that Mr. Aragi would have gone straight to school at this hour, which is why I'm here bravely searching for him at random.
Looking for people isn't your strong suit, Mayoi, is it?
Well, but it's exactly what led me to you, Miss Hanekawa. My tracking abilities are nothing to sneeze at.
How forward-looking.
Be that as it may, I don't know whether or not you could count yourself fortunate for having met me today.
Try it. People in my circle say that anyone who meets you is guaranteed to have something good happen that day. You're spoken of as a lucky item.
Please, stop making up strange legends about me.
My source, of course, was Aragi. No one can outdo him when it comes to spreading false rumors. He has what it takes to be a pretty good teller of ghost stories.
Okay, if I see Araragi at school, I'll tell him you were looking for him.
Thank you very much.
Mayoi said, politely bowing down her little head, before going back the way she came in her still charming trot. Obviously, Mayoi doesn't have long conversations with me the way she does with Araragi. I envy him for being able to talk on the same eye level with cute little girls like Mayoi. And yes, I suppose I envy Mayoi for being able to chat on and on with Araragi. Araragi seems to find it completely natural. To me, it's far more of a miracle than anything I do. I'm jealous.
Well then, let us meet again soon, Miss Hanekawa.
Mayoi was kind enough to turn around once more and wave her hand from a distance. I waved back.
Chic! See you later!
What's about to happen with me and Mr. Aragi is an episode for the next volume.
Don't be so crass with your foreshadowing.
That wasn't even foreshadowing, it was just an ad for a program. Following in Araragi's footsteps, I at least managed to get one quip in at the end.
Meet an aberration and you'll be drawn by aberrations, they say? Apparently. Whether they mean drawn in, drawn together, drawn out, or even drawn and quartered, the possibilities seem closely related if you really think about it, making it all a chaotic mess. But according to Mr. Ashino, people who have encountered an aberration even once are more likely to meet one again for the rest of their lives. He said there was no rhyme or reason to it. But I think you can assign one, a realistic reason. Nothing mysterious or inexplicable. It could, of course, just be my tricky bad habit of ascribing a reason to everything. Basically, though, it's a matter of memory and cognition. Everyone has experienced learning a new word or phrase and suddenly running into it everywhere. For example, when I learned about jellied meats, I was inundated with them whether I was reading a newspaper or novel or watching television or a film. It's not just words.
The same phenomenon occurs with music and names, too. If you know it, you know it.
You know it more the more you know it. Knowledge equals cognition, memory. It's just what you know. In other words, a circuit for recognizing it has formed in your head, and from out of the torrent of information flowing into you each day, you're able to scoop up what you used to ignore. Aberrations are everywhere. Aberrations are only there. It's merely a question of whether or not you notice them. That's why the first time is so important. Your very first is your most important one.
For Araragi, it was a demon. For Miss Senjogahara, it was a crab.
For Mayoi, it was a snail. For Sengoku, it was a snake. For Miss Kambaru, it was a monkey. For Karen, it was a bee. And for me, it was a cat. Now, if you're wondering why I've started to talk about this all of a sudden, it's because there was one in front of me at that moment. One what? An aberration. Ugh. Normally, in encountering an aberration, people must think, ghosts aren't supposed to exist in this world, yokai aren't supposed to exist in this world, what I'm looking at can't be an aberration, they must. But at that moment, I was thinking nothing but the absolute opposite. I was wishing with all my heart that it was an aberration in front of me. After all, a tiger. It was a tiger. A tiger, prowling right in front of me. Yellow and black stripes. The very picture of a tiger. It happened soon after I saw Mayoi off. I turned the corner, and there was the tiger. No, even phrasing it that way imparts no sense of reality, no taste of an actual occurrence. Since it doesn't, it had to be unreal. It had to be an aberration. Actually, it was going to be an issue if it wasn't an aberration. Whatever the facts of the matter, I stood less than 15 feet from it. I could almost reach out and touch its stripes. If the tiger were real and not an aberration, say one that had escaped from a zoo, my life was surely over. I was so close that I couldn't even run. I'd be eaten, humbly accepted into its stomach. I'd be passing the baton along in the race of life. By the way, they say that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, but any excessive aberration is indistinguishable from reality, too. Its uniquely feral scent, its even majestic presence, it was all so intense that lacking in reality, it yet seemed like realness itself. But I was okay. The dearly beloved television anchor hadn't said a word about a tiger escaping from its zoo.
The tiger growled. It didn't care to let loose an affected prowl, the way predators do in manga. Then, coming to a halt, the tiger glared at me. Oh no. Our eyes had met. Whether the tiger was real or an aberration meeting eyes was a bad idea. With a real tiger, of course, that was reason enough to get attacked. And if it was an aberration, it recognizing me was bad news. Almost as bad, no, even worse than me recognizing it. I instantly averted my gaze. I put the tiger outside of my visual field. Though this didn't provoke the tiger into moving again, at the same time, I couldn't move from my spot. Either, whether it was animal or aberration, my reaction to it ended up being lukewarm.
If I wanted to run, I should have run. Why wasn't I running away? I'd be safe if I just ran. Why not do it? How long did I stand there like that? People often describe these situations as seeming to take hours or the opposite, as happening in a flash, but to be honest with you, I didn't have the space to think about it at all. I have a surprisingly narrow mind, able neither to be here nor not here, which makes me sound like an aberration myself, and then, at last.
White.
Thus spoke the tiger, aberration confirmed.
White. And how transparently so.
It said before starting to swing its four stopped legs forward without further ado, and loping, lumbering past me. As someone who'd never seen the creature we call a tiger up close before, I had no sense of perspective for this subject that had been 15 feet ahead, but as soon as it passed by my side, it was impressed upon me that the position its torso occupied was higher than my head, that it was too huge, once again, to be real.
I probably shouldn't have turned around. If it was passing by me, I ought to have let it pass. It had decided to take its eyes off of me. So why follow it with my own? But I, white, and how transparently so, ensnared by the words the tiger had spoken to me, I thoughtlessly, carelessly, turned around. How completely foolish. I'd hardly learned my lessons from first term, including Golden Week. How was I going to take Araragi to task about anything now? No, when it comes to me. I'm far worse than Araragi. But fortunately, or maybe not, it's difficult to say. Well, of course it clearly wasn't. But there was nothing there when I turned around. Forget tigers, there wasn't even a cat. Just a plain street, the same path to school as always. Oh, jeez! I said that not because the tiger had disappeared, but having glanced at the watch on my left wrist. 8:30. It seemed like I was going to be tardy for the first time in my life. You have to hear this, Miss Senjogahara. I met a tiger on my way to school today.
Did you? Now. So, Miss Hanekawa, am I obligated to listen to the details of this story? When you say, you have to hear this, is that not just a lead-in, but an earnest request?
As we'd walked in little groups back to our classrooms after the beginning of term ceremony, I'd run up to Miss Senjogahara, who was in my class. Then I told her about my morning. With a slightly bothered expression, however, she treated me to an openly bothered reaction.
What?
She'd chopped off her hip-length hair at some point during summer break before going straight to her grandparents' home on her dad's side, so I wasn't sure about Aragi. But a short-haired Miss Senjogahara was a new sight for me. She always had very neat features, and any hairstyle, short or long, would look like a perfect fit on her, but the trim wiped out any trace of the air of a cloistered princess that surrounded her during our first term. It stirred quiet controversy among the rest of our classmates, possibly more than when I cut my hair. But in my opinion, cloistered princess is almost an insult for a high school girl. So, this was good.
Did you just say a tiger, Miss Hanekawa, not a cat?
Yep. Not a cat, but a tiger.
Not a tiger-striped cat?
Nope. A tiger-striped tiger?
Not a tiger-striped hyena?
I think that would be a regular striped hyena. But nope, it wasn't.
Don't you think more people would be happy to earn stripes if we called them hyenas?
I don't.
She nodded.
This way.
She took my hand. She took me aside. It seemed like she wanted to break away from the group, as there was a bit of time before homeroom began, and indeed, this was something I hesitated to talk about in front of others in our classroom. We went behind the gymnasium. Those words have a somewhat frightening feel to them, but the gym's environs have been under some of the most scrupulous management possible ever since the girls' basketball teams run the previous year. The area, in fact, feels wholesome and open. The weather being nice too, this was an optimal situation for girls talking romance. But we were going to make a ghost story bloom. Maybe I should say withering story.
You saw a tiger? Miss Hanekawa, isn't that something to be very worried about?
I think so. Oh, but no, wasn't a real-life tiger. It was probably an aberration. It talked.
What's the difference? That doesn't change anything. Even a flesh and blood tiger is practically an aberration to a Japanese person.
She was right. Her way of seeing the world was as bold as ever. A realistic audacity.
If someone told me that pandas are monsters, I'd believe it.
I'm not sure about that one.
What about giraffes? Those are rokurokubi, right there.
Zoos must seem like haunted houses to you, Miss Senjogahara.
That might be true, she nodded. How candid.
Even so, Miss Hanekawa, what an unexpected thing to encounter. Or maybe I should say you're as amazing as ever. A tiger? A tiger? A tiger. It's just... How could you be any more stylish than that? A crab, a snail, a monkey. What was it for Karen? A bee, I want to say. Take that line up, and then what do you add to it but a tiger? It's like we've all been in a foot race, each one of us careful not to stick out so that we can all cross the finish line together, a friendly, flat competition, and then you go and do this? How can anyone be so insensitive? That might even be cooler than Aragi's demon.
You always have such a unique way of looking at things.
Did it do anything to you?
No, it didn't do anything, or at least, I don't think it did. It's hard to know about these kinds of things for yourself, which is why I wanted to ask you. Is there anything strange about me right now?
Well, you being absent from school is one thing, but it isn't like you to be tardy. That isn't what you mean, though. Is it?
No.
Excuse me.
Bringing her face closer, she poured over my skin, like she was going to lick it, like she was inspecting my skin, my eyeballs, my nose, my brows, my lips, each individual part. After she was done with my face, she took my hand and examined my nails and the vessels on the back of my hand.
What are you doing, Miss Senjogahara?
Checking to see if there's anything unusual.
Really?
At least, that's what I was doing at first.
Then what is it you're doing now?
Indulging my eyes.
I shook her off, as hard as I could.
Ah.
She exclaimed, looking at me with a very disappointed expression. But, well, I'm sure she meant it as a joke. You might be surprised to hear this, but Miss Senjogahara loves to joke around. I hope it was a joke, especially because Ararati recently told me about Miss Kanbari's preferences.
So what do you think?
You're fine. You'll be able to reel them in for another decade with that skin.
That's not what I meant.
There's nothing that I can see. It's not as if you've sprouted tiger ears or anything.
Tiger ears?
It wasn't a remark I could take in jest as someone who'd sprouted cat ears in the past, and precisely because the analogy was realistic, I let out an exaggerated laugh while giving my head a sly check. I was fine. I hadn't sprouted anything.
But it's not as if something unusual is bound to happen as soon as you encounter an aberration considering the time lag. We can't relax yet.
Right.
We can't rule out the possibility that you'll wake up as a bug tomorrow.
I do think that's too much of a leap.
She needed to link it to tigers in some way, even if she loved Kafka.
For this stuff, I think you ought to be talking to Aragi instead of me. True, I did meet a crab aberration, and it caused me a whole lot of suffering, but that doesn't mean I'm equipped with the methods or the know-how for dealing with it any more than other people.
Yes, but...
She was right. Meeting an aberration doesn't mean you're experienced. In fact, the more seasoned you become, the further you skid off the career track. Discussing this with Miss Senjogahara only served to trouble her. It could even end up reopening old wounds.
But it does seem like Araragi's taking the day off.
What? Wasn't he lined up there at the beginning of term ceremony? His absence going unnoticed says even more about how ignorable he is than his presence going unnoticed.
She laughed. A shudder ran through me. The dregs of what Ararati calls her acid-tongued era seep out at times. Then again, the venom had been removed over summer break, and now too she'd spoken in a way that made it clear she was just kidding. Humans are able to change, You could call her living proof of that.
Well, he says he doesn't need to worry about his attendance record too much anymore, but I do wonder what happened to my beloved darling.
Don't call him that. Speaking of, actually, I also ran into Minoi this morning before meeting the tiger. Judging by what she said, he does seem to be up to something.
Something, you say? Same thing as always, I guess.
It could be. He can only focus on what's right in front of him.
Did you try calling him, or sending him an email or something?
Something stopped me.
I really didn't want to bother him when he was obviously at work. I'd have brought it straight to him if he were at school, of course, but I wasn't sure about going so far as to call or text him. It was less discretion than out of concern for his safety.
Right. I think it'd be fine for you to be a little more shameless.
Shameless.
Or maybe I should say unashamed. He'll never be annoyed by a request from you, no matter what kind of situation he's in. You know that, don't you?
I'm not sure. Maybe I don't.
Or is it out of consideration for me?
Oh no. Of course not.
Just as long as it isn't.
This time she let out a sigh. A deep sigh.
Well, it's not like something is bound to happen, so we shouldn't get too nervous being worried. Sick would defeat the whole purpose. That'd just make us a pathological yandere. Still, since this tiger might attack someone other than you, don't you think we need to talk to Araragi? Whether it's a tiger or a lion, it's not like either of us is capable of fighting an aberration. Aren't you just like me, knowledgeable but inexperienced, and only equipped with second-hand wisdom?
Sure, but
Her phrasing was taking on a certain innuendo. It was hard to tell if she was doing it on purpose. I'm sure Aragi would have figured it out and replied with the perfect zinger. I lack that skill.
You'd have to be like Araragi and have a pet vampire in your shadow. To fight an aberration, well, Kambara seems like she might be able to if she felt like it, but we shouldn't ask that girl to do anything unreasonable.
yeah.
I'd heard about it, vaguely. The bandage on her left arm, I assumed. That wasn't an issue of discretion, it was dangerous, as a practical matter. While Miss Kanbaru's aberration trouble had been solved, it was as though she were living with a bomb strapped to her. Or maybe you could say she was the bomb herself. But if we did, wasn't the same true for Araragi? Could that be why I wasn't able to call him? It seemed to be, but I knew it wasn't why. Ultimately, it was exactly as Miss Senjagahara said. I wasn't able to be shameless with Araragi. The reason was abundantly clear, no doubt.
Miss Hanekawa, have you ever asked Araragi to save you?
What?
The sudden question brought me back to my senses. She'd surprised me.
Huh? Save? I don't know. It doesn't seem like the kind of word you'd use in a regular conversation. Probably not.
Okay, neither have I. He'd probably save us before we ever said it, and he'd do it reciting some phony quote like, "People just go and get saved on their own."
It wasn't a phony quote, it was a real one that I'd heard before. Mr. Oshino constantly repeated that line.
It wasn't just the crab. There was the time with Kambaru. There was Kaiki. There have been a lot of times that he saved me, both in the open and from the shadows. But I feel like his saving us without us saying anything doesn't mean we don't need to be saying anything.
Just maybe. Well, I think you might be expecting him to save you before you ever say anything.
Ah. Is that how it looks? But now that she said it, the sad fact of the matter was that I couldn't deny it outright. I couldn't make my approach and was just waiting for the other party to approach me. Was I? Well, such a me did exist. There was a dark me inside me, and being inside me, it was closer to me than anyone else.
I think you just ought to rely on him. He's always hoping that you will. If you'd been able to, during Golden Week.
So she said, but stopped mid-sentence. Maybe she felt she'd gone too far, even though she hadn't said it all. But rather than apologize, she just acted awkward. Nor would I have known how to respond if she'd said sorry. There was no reason for her to.
Why don't we go back to class?
This wasn't particularly an attempt to bail her out. It really was time for us to be heading back, according to my watch, to the point that we needed to run up the stairs.
Let's. I'm not pressuring you or anything, but you shouldn't try to handle your problems all by yourself. You still tend to do that if you're unwilling to bother Aragi, then get me involved, though I can't do much. Well, I guess I could die with you at least.
Miss Senjogahara casually threw out those outrageous words and began walking toward the school building. Though she may have been rehabilitated, that part of her that you might call her overwhelming strength was still alive and kicking. Sure, it wasn't so much getting rehabilitated as getting cuter, to be frank, especially in Aragi's presence. But since Aragi only knows her as she is in his presence, it might take him a little more time to realize that. Like I was going to tell him, and so on. Then, together we returned to our class. I was afraid we'd miss the start of homeroom, but we hadn't. Well, our teacher, Hashina-sensei, was already there. That normally meant that it had already started, but everyone in class, our teacher included, was stuck to the window facing the athletic field. Not a person was seated, so it wasn't anything like homeroom. What was going on? What was going on? What could they be seeing? She's a good bit taller than me, so she noticed it before I could, to be precise. She took off her shoes and stood on a chair the moment she knew everyone was looking at something. Contrary to appearances, she could be surprisingly proactive. Lacking her nerve, I simply weaved through my classmates, approached one of the windows, and gazed out of it. I immediately saw what everyone was looking at.
Fire, my mind was blank in a haze. I rarely spoke to myself outside the house, yet there I was, speaking to myself, beholding the roaring flames, so powerful it seemed like their sound might reach us, despite looking like a speck from where we stood. Far away, I ended up speaking to myself. My house is on fire, that house I'd gone and called it mine. There were two things I didn't know. First, I didn't know the house I lived in was visible from the window of the classroom where I spent my days studying. I'd had opportunities to stand by the window and gaze outside. Why hadn't I noticed? Why wasn't it visible? I guess it had to be, and I just never consciously recognized it. In other words, according to the reverse of the logic of meet an aberration, and you'll be drawn by aberrations, I must have been pushing that house out of my consciousness. And the other thing I didn't know was how unexpectedly shocked I'd feel if that house burned down. It left me speechless. It was enough to make my mind go blank. It was a shock to my system. Aragi seems to be mistaken about this point, but I'm not all that mature. I harbor the same kind of destructive impulses as everyone else. He placed an excessive level of trust in my character even after the nightmare of Golden Week. Or no, maybe he was just pretending to overlook things, but I'd wish time and time again for that lousy house to disappear. But I never thought it really would, and I never thought I'd feel such a strong sense of loss. It wasn't as if I'd been attached to it. I didn't even feel like I'd thought of it as my house. I let words to that effect slip out of my mouth, but it must have been a momentary failing. But the unwavering fact was that I felt strongly enough about it to have that moment. Was that a good thing? I felt strongly enough. Yes, that was a fact. Or was it a bad thing? You could probably take it either way, but either way, it was too late. It was gone now. That home where I'd spent 15 years of my life, it was lost forever. I asked my teacher if I could leave early despite having arrived late, and of course I immediately received permission. I'm not Miss Kambaro, but I ran back to the house, and while the area was surrounded by fire engines and onlookers, it had already been put out, and nothing was left. Though the fire hadn't spread to any neighboring homes, the Hanekawa residence was what you'd call razed, without a single column remaining. Extremely beneficial in making a fire insurance claim. That status was perhaps a saving grace. As vulgar as that sounds, it's of paramount importance. Oh, wait. No. Of paramount importance, naturally, are human lives, but there was no need to worry about that. I'd been at school, and there was close to no chance that the other two, who should be called my parents, would ever return to the house in the morning. None of the three inhabitants considered it a home. It was a place, not a home. But Roomba must have gone up in flames. I mourned the passing of the automatic vacuum cleaner that tirelessly woke me up each morning. Mourned more than the house. A lot of other things in addition to Roomba, or rather, everything had gone up in flames. But I was a mere high schooler with no remarkable possessions. That wasn't going to be a problem for me. If you insist losing all my clothes was a complication. Actually, it might have been the same for the persons who should be called my father and my mother. Neither could have been keeping anything important in the house. They must have kept anything valuable at work. That was how I saw it. That house, it wasn't a place for keeping anything of value. They get dirty. In any case, this just meant I was full of things I didn't know. You only ever notice some stuff after a house burns down? I've never met the man in person, but was this one of those lessons to take home with me that the fraud Mr. Dishu Kaiki likes to speak of? I wasn't sure. I didn't know. But whether or not I knew, this definitely meant I was being put out on the street. I had spots to go to for no particular reason on days off because I couldn't stand being at home. But how fortunate I had been to have a place where I could go to bed either way. The Hanekawas ended up having their first family discussion in a while as a result of this incident. A discussion? Well, even I can imagine that normal families wouldn't call that a discussion. It wasn't anything close to a family meeting. It was an exchange of opinions, not social interaction. A house burning down naturally necessitated a lot of different complicated procedures. We didn't even know the cause of the fire yet. It was frightening. There were even suspicions of arson, so it was going to be a long-term problem, not something that could be handled by me, who was still a child. What we discussed that day was our most pressing problem, in other words, where we would sleep that night. With no nearby relatives the Hanekawas could rely on, there wasn't a whole lot of room for debate. We ended up booking the nearest hotel, but even that was a problem for us. The biggest problem, you could say, or maybe the single issue. We hadn't slept in the same room in a very long time. There was me, of course, who slept in the hallway, but even the married couple slept in different bedrooms. We couldn't get 2 or 3 rooms at a hotel when it would only make this more expensive. I'm fine. I'll get a friend to let me stay with them for a while.
Before the discussion could get too deep, I said that. I proclaimed it.
Dad, Mom, this is a great chance for you two to spend some time alone together as husband and wife. I wasn't saying this as an excuse, but as how I truly felt, and I knew that was part of what made me so frightening and inhuman. I learned over Golden Week that it was one of my flaws. I didn't want to go to bed in the same room as those two. Those personal feelings were no doubt there, but I was putting them far, far aside, and it was very unnatural. I knew that. Seeing the fire as a great chance didn't exactly make me human. Araragi and Mr. Ashino had taught me that. A lesson. Here I was, not having put it to use, but I just couldn't help thinking those two might go back to being the way they ought to be. I was able to think it. Namely, that this could be the last chance for those two who planned on getting divorced as soon as I ceased to be a minor. I thought so. It would take several months to rebuild the house when you factored everything in, and if they spent a few weeks alone together for the first time in 15 years before we found a place to rent, then just maybe something could happen. I did think so. I was able to think so. I wanted to think so. But two agreed right away. They didn't even try to stop me when I conveyed my intention to stay at various friends' houses. In fact, they were visibly happy that I'd suggested it myself. Well, of course they were. It was easier for the two of them to be alone than for the three of us to be alone. The fire might have been a reasonably welcome thing for them, too, in that it let them drive off a source of annoyance in their lives. They were delighted, and I was happy that they were delighted, so I had to be pretty It put me in a difficult situation, though. Well, I was from the start. But the greatest difficulty now was the fact that I didn't have any friends who could let me stay with them for a while. I have friends. I wouldn't say a lot of them because my personality is a little problematic, but I feel like I have the kinds of friendly relationships at school that any average student would. On that note, Aragi likes to talk about how few friends he has, almost boasting rather than roasting himself, but that is the one claim he makes that I will vouch for. He isn't lying. It's not an exaggeration. He doesn't have friends. Actually, he was comporting himself so as not to make any friends for a long time. According to him, it would lower his intensity as a human or something. He really believed and really said that. While he seems to have abandoned that philosophy, he's still in the thick of rehabilitation, and I've never seen him speak to another boy in our class. In fact, I've never seen him speak to anyone other than me and Miss Senjogahara. I wonder if he knows that just as Miss Senjogahara used to be the cloistered princess, he's still being called the unmovable silence. So compared to him, I have friends. People are friends with me. But when I really think about it, I've never stayed over at a friend's house. I have zero experience with so-called sleepovers. Now that I'm thinking about it, why is that? I so loathe spending time at the house, but I never authentically ran away either. Haragi would say it's because I'm a model student. And he probably isn't mistaken, but just maybe Miss Senjo Gahara's view is the right one. In other words, have you ever asked him to save you? Not just Araragi. I bet I can't seek help from anyone other than myself. I don't want to entrust anything decisive to others. I don't want to let go of the casting board. I want to define my life on my own. And so I became a cat. An aberration. I became me. Well, it should be fine. I do have a lead, fortunately. Saying so, not really even speaking to myself, but to give myself courage, I began walking, my school bag the only thing I carried. It was the start of a new trimester or beginning of term ceremony, so I had only my pencils and notebooks inside it, nothing much. But it was now my sole possession. A single bag being the sum total of my belongings made me like Anne Shirley when she first appears. I somewhat enjoyed my predicament. Quite inappropriately, so I guess I'm not entirely grave and serious after all. And as for my lead, it must be obvious. The ruins of that abandoned cram school. Apparently it was called Eiko Cram School while it was still in business. The place where Mr. Oshino and Shinobu had lived for about 3 months and Araragi lived there too over spring break. So, no matter how ruined it looked, it had to feature a bare minimum of facilities. A person needed to stay the night. That was my read on it. A proper floor and a roof over my head were to be taken for granted. While it was far away on foot, I wanted to save money. Considering what I faced and didn't use the bus, Mr. Ashino used to have a barrier around the place that made it harder to reach than you thought, but it had been removed by now. You just needed to follow the path, and you'd get there. There was obviously no electricity in the building, so I needed to prepare a place to sleep while it was still bright out. Didn't Mr. Oshino and Araragi put desks and chairs together to create beds? In that case, I'd follow their example. I passed through the fence, entered the ruins, and began by climbing the stairs to the 4th floor. I chose it because Aragi had told me that Mr. Oshino frequently resided there. In other words, I imagined that the 4th floor was easier to live on than the others, given the living patterns of the previous inhabitant, but this was a swing and a miss. Or maybe it was closer to striking out. The first classroom I entered on the 4th floor had a hole in the ceiling. The next classroom had an opening in its floor. Not even a proper floor or roof above my head. As for the remaining classroom, it was so messy it seemed like a wild animal had been set loose inside, almost like Aragi and Maoi had one of their wild free-for-alls or something. I felt a tinge of regret. Maybe I'd been too hasty. I'd been sure the place wasn't this bleak, though I already had this location in mind when I declared my intent to stay at various friends' houses. It was actually a harsher environment than I'd imagined. Forcing a smile and doing my best to feel excited, I went down to the 3rd floor where the first classroom I entered had holes in both the ceiling and the floor. The hole in the ceiling seemed connected to the hole I'd seen in the 4th floor classroom. Wow, really? What happened here? Judging by the edge's color, the damage had to be fairly new. If this was the floor naturally caving in, the building's earthquake proofing left much to be desired. My heart was pounding as I ventured onward until at last I arrived at a classroom whose ceiling, floor, and walls were all in decent shape. I couldn't let myself feel relieved just yet and went straight to creating a bed. Though it reminded me a bit of a Boy Scout camp, I obviously have never been a Boy Scout. What I know is only what I know, it's not experience. Miss Senjo Gahara was right about that too. It's as if I'm accumulating knowledge, and accumulating senselessness right next to it. Indeed, improvising a bed by tying together some available desks was nothing more than that, yet not easy. First of all, I didn't have any strings to do the tying. I ended up having to leave the ruins to shop at the closest store. Okay, all done. Mr. Ashino's bed used one more desk than this, but I'm not as tall as him. This size will do. Still, making something with your own hands is fun. The completed bed seemed like a fairly impressive piece of work, unable to hold myself back. I lay down, still in my school uniform. Eck. This was no good. My high expectations translated into massive psychological damage. This really was no good. I felt seriously depressed. It was the same as sleeping on the floor. It was rough and bumpy. Finding it necessary to conduct a control experiment, I tried spreading out on the floor. There didn't seem to be much of a difference after all. Actually, the connected sections of the desk bed almost made it the harder of the two to sleep on. What a terrifying man Mr. Oshino was. He could probably sleep on a bed of nails. Wondering what Araragi and Shinobu had done, I was reminded that Shinobu was in fact a vampire, and that Araragi had been one too during his time here. They weren't going to be useful points of comparison. Vampires can get a good day's rest inside a cramped little casket, so I didn't have a clue what sleeping entailed for them. Bedding. I need bedding. Muttering, I left the ruins again. I had my wallet with me, and it contained my debit card, so it wasn't as if I couldn't go shopping. It wasn't such a hassle because I needed all sorts of things and not just plastic strings, but as someone who even had to cut back on bus fares at the moment, I couldn't possibly afford a warm futon. I had to find some kind of substitute. I remembered reading in some book that newspapers, magazines, and cardboard boxes were very economical ways to stay warm. I would probably be able to get cardboard boxes for free from a department store. Considering the amount of things I needed to buy, I would have to take the bus back, but I just had to be resigned on that point. One shouldn't skimp on the essentials. Never let poverty slow the wit. What a beautiful saying. For precisely that reason, however, I walked there. I walked slowly. One step at a time, like I was packing the earth with my feet, my absolute essentials were food that would keep and water. I decided to use cardboard boxes as my mattress and newspapers, not magazines as a blanket. With magazines, I'd have to tear out the pages, something I was afraid I couldn't do. It just felt wrong to destroy reading material, even a magazine. With newspapers, their pages were already separated. Then came clothes. I couldn't sleep in my uniform, although Araragi was starting to suspect that I didn't own a single set of casual clothes. Of course that wasn't true. Those two had never behaved like parents for me, but that isn't to say they completely neglected their child. They did do the bare minimum, as if they were fulfilling an obligation. So they did at least buy me clothes, I just didn't want to wear them very much. And anyway, they all went up in flames. When they do, it's the end. It feels like a reset. Yes, and while it was altogether inappropriate, I couldn't deny a part of me felt refreshed. Of course, if anything was illusory, it was that freshness. Reset? No, there had been no reset. What else was my current situation but an emergency evacuation? Just because it was gone didn't mean it never happened. Making my rounds through the department store's general emporium, I saw that clothes were surprisingly expensive. I would have to get on a train. But maybe I needed to go to Uniqlo. So I was beginning to think when I noticed the 100 yen shop next door. That gave me an idea, and when I went over, I found it. They weren't going to be selling pajamas. Well, pajama-style sweatshirts and sweatpants for just 100 yen, but I was glad to find that they did their underwear. I bought both right away, and I was done shopping. But I can't show underwear I bought at a 100 yen shop to Arabi. The foolish thought ran through my head as I got on the bus as planned and returned to the abandoned cram school. Mr. Oshino never gave off any vibes of everyday life, but he was a human, not a vampire, and when I realized he must have spent 3 months fighting and struggling like this, an odd wave of admiration washed over me. Back in the third-floor classroom, I began reinforcing my bed. I used a box cutter to slice up the cardboard, then wrapped 2 layers around the desk with packing tape. It's still a cardboard box at the end of the day, you might think, but this made an overwhelming difference in comfort. I wrapped 1 more layer of cardboard on top, just to be sure, completing my bedding. All of this had left me quite tired, so I decided to eat. I had nothing but preserved foods, which meant I didn't need to cook. Of course I didn't forget. "Thank you for the meal," I said. If you go far enough back, some kind of life had to be sacrificed to create even preserved food. And so thank you for the meal. No, even if it didn't contain any morsel of life, the food would become my flesh and blood, so I would gratefully accept it. Life is precious, even if it's not alive. Still, I was going to tire of such insipid fare eventually, so maybe I needed to buy a gas burner and a pot soon. While my abode was only a temporary one until those two could find a rental, they were busy too, so I could end up living here for quite a while. I can just use the toilets and showers at school. And worst case, I can even charge my phone there. I should be able to study in a reading room or the library. What else do I need to worry about? I brought up every potential problem and examined it quickly, coming up with a plan to deal with each. It began to feel less like worrying over the coming days and devising measures and more of a reaffirmation to myself that the darned house burning down didn't affect me at all. It was like I was making ends meet inside me. Like I was solving the contradictions. It was very me. I gave my thanks again after finishing my meal. Summer was still going strong, so the sun should have been setting late, but it had gotten pitch black out without my noticing. I changed into the pajamas I'd bought at the 100 yen store, having changed my underwear too, and went to sleep on my brand new bed. I wouldn't quite say comfortable. Strangely, though, I might have slept more soundly than I ever did in the hallway. Didn't we skip over a section number? Am I just imagining things? Whatever, it's fine. The ruin seemed like a place where Roomba could have really shined. But sadly, he burned down with the rest of everything in the house, which meant I could no longer rely on him to wake me up in the morning. Even so, I presumed I could wake up at the same time as always. Humans have something called a circadian rhythm. This biorhythm is ingrained into our bodies and doesn't falter easily. Not only that, I was someone who didn't know what it meant to be still asleep. Or so I believed until reality intruded. It wasn't that I overslept. In fact, I woke up earlier than I'd planned and I didn't wake up naturally. I was woken up. But there shouldn't have been anyone who would, now that Roomba was gone.
Miss Hanekawa!
I was pulled from bed. Does being still asleep involve incredible images diving into your view? I thought lazily as I waited for my understanding to catch up to my perception, looking at Miss Senjogahara, who was right in front of me with her hands on my collar. I thought lazily.
Are you okay? Are you alive?
Good morning? Good morning.
I gave her a greeting, my first time doing so in a while, actually still unsure of what was happening. I was even bewildered. After all, the normally cool and collected Miss Senjogahara had tears streaming down her reddened face as she stared at me.
Are you okay?
Still unsure why she was so worried, I nodded, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
In response, Miss Senjogahara finally let go of my collar, bit down on her lip, seemed to hold back an outburst of tears, and then…
Idiot.
She slapped me across the face, roused awake, and slapped away. I probably could have dodged them if I'd tried, but she looked so fierce that I just accepted the blows. No, I probably couldn't dodge them. Heat pulsed through my cheek.
Idiot. Idiot. Idiot.
Not content with hitting me once, Miss Senjogahara did so again and again. Her slapping stance deteriorating until she was just popping me in the chest like a child having a tantrum. It didn't hurt at all, but it hurt so much.
You're a girl by herself, and you're staying in a place like this. What if something happened to you?
I'm sorry.
Well, I should say I was made to. This miniature Boy Scout experience only felt like I was having a bit of fun, and I'd been free of regret or remorse. Even so, I was certain I had made Miss Senjogahara, yes, that Miss Senjogahara, terribly worried. And inappropriately enough, that made me feel a bit glad. I was happy.
Oh, I'm not forgiving you. I'll never forgive you.
She said, snuggling, clinging, nestling into and hugging me. She was never going to let me go again.
I'm not forgiving you. I'll never forgive you. Not even if you apologize.
Okay, understood. I got it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I still reiterated my apology. I put my arms around Miss Senjogahara and returned her embrace, and I continued to apologize. In the end, it took about half an hour for her to stop crying, which brought us to the time that I normally woke up.
I called you constantly since last night, you know.
Miss Senjogahara then said, having turned back into her beautiful nonchalant self. It was incredible how speedily she could switch over. Still, she wasn't quite put together since she couldn't do anything about her red puffy eyes. Meanwhile, apparently my bedhead was awful, probably because of my bed. She called me Super Saiyan Hanekawa. So in terms of how put together we looked, The two of us must have been on about the same level. I couldn't help but be amazed, though, by how normal she was acting, as if all that bawling until a minute ago had just been for show. I simply found it adorable. So adorable I almost didn't care about my bedhead.
I couldn't even imagine what it'd feel like for your house to be on fire. I thought you might not want to talk to anyone, and I considered not calling you, but I was just too worried. I decided, whatever, just call her. But you never picked up.
Sorry. I had my phone off. I thought I should try to conserve as much as I can in light of the survivalist lifestyle I'm going to be living.
I hadn't used my cell phone as an alarm clock partly because of my faith in my circadian rhythm, but I also did have another more pragmatic reason. There was no guarantee that I'd be able to use a power outlet at school. I'm sure my teachers would let me if I explained, but generally, phones are banned at my school.
God, you're always such a stickler for the rules. Just grab whatever random outlet you find. You don't need to ask.
But that would be stealing electricity.
I ended up running all around town thanks to that honesty of yours. I talked to various people to come by the intel that you were probably staying over at a friend's house, but no one in class said you were staying with them.
How many people did you talk to?
I went through my network.
Compared to her days of being not just shy but out-and-out paranoid, how she'd grown. But it also meant the whole class now knew I'd gone missing. My goodness.
Actually, I should apologize, Miss Hanekawa. I went and met your parents, too.
What?
I was surprised. In other words, had she visited the hotel where those two were staying? It did seem possible to figure out where they were if you were patient enough. It wasn't as if they were in hiding and they would have had to inform places like the post office. Though Miss Senjo Gahara probably went to the hotel sure that I'd be there.
Oh, you met my dad and my mom.
Do you really need to call people like them your dad and mom?
Miss Senjo Gahara asked bluntly. Bluntlier, she seemed disgusted. Her expression used to tell you nothing about her mindset, but recently her feelings were starting to show. Whether it was joy or sorrow, or anger, it seemed like she'd had quite the meeting with those people. If only they tried a little harder to keep up appearances, they'd been awful towards Mr. Oshino over Golden Week too. But then again, maybe I had no right to think so when I couldn't come up with any appropriate reply. I wasn't able to paper it over Shia listening.
It looks like there's a lot going on. I don't mean to pry, though.
Unlike Arahagi, she barely knew a thing about my domestic situation, about the warped and disharmonious Hanekawas, but uninterested in digging any deeper, she put us right back on track. An impressive feat. I even felt admiration for her.
I went around everywhere after that, until this morning when I finally thought of this place. Well, no, I'd thought of it from the start, but didn't want to believe that a young lady would choose to spend the night in these ruins. I thought you would never ever, and put if off until last.
Huh? Wait, don't tell me you were up all night, Miss Senjugahara?
Even if I didn't tell you, Miss Senjo Gahara was. Not a wink. It was an all-nighter, in shining armor.
Which is why I cried when I found you. I was so worked up, she explained. What a cute excuse. She was playing on night, of course.
It's plenty dangerous for a young lady to be wandering the streets so late, too.
I have nothing to say in my defense.
I'm not the type to ponder the consequences, she added. Dressed in a very casual outfit, jeans and a t-shirt, she was drenched in sweat. She hadn't been wandering around all this time so much as dashing about as if she were Ms. Conber.
Thanks.
I expressed my gratitude as briefly and undramatically as I could before getting off my bed. My body didn't hurt. I don't think of myself as particularly talented, even though Aragi insists that I am, but I do seem to have a knack for crafting beds. Maybe I ought to become an expert craftsman of sleeping beds. Does that require an apprenticeship in Germany or thereabouts?
It's fine. It was my own decision, and by the looks of it, I was wasting my time sticking my nose into your business.
That's not true. I've finally realized how dangerous this was now that you've told me. They say fire drives people mad, and it seems like the house fire got me all weirdly worked up too.
You think? I hope that's what it is. But you do terribly dangerous things even when you aren't worked up.
Do I?
Like seduce Araragi.
Indeed. I didn't know how to rebut that. I didn't, even though I never seduced him. The theory that I'd made him the way he was had become surprisingly entrenched out in the world.
He really was cool. When he first got mixed up with me, there's barely a trace of that left now, though.
Is that my fault?
Well, there was also that tiger. I did get excessively worried, true. I'm sorry. It wasn't like me to lose it. Now why don't we get going?
Get going? To where? School?
To my home. And I'm declaring in advance that if you try to resist, I'm going to stick a stapler inside your mouth and whack you on your neck. Is that what it's going to take to bring you with me?
When she'd done exactly that to Araragi in the past, there was no way I was going to defy her. Although she told me as much, the Temakura apartments, where Miss Senjo Gahara lived, were a terrible sight. Nothing short of decrepit. It was enough to make you think they predated the war. But while Aragi once made a mean remark about being more worried for its earthquake-proofing than for the abandoned cram schools, his way of showing concern for Miss Senjo Gahara, in my opinion, the structure felt unexpectedly sturdy as I climbed the stairs. Maybe old buildings are more reliable that way than the prefabs you see these days. Also, its security features were on another level. There was even a lock on the apartment door. Now that I was at a home, I was realizing just how unsafe those ruins were.
My dad won't be back today because of work. You should stay over tonight.
What?
Really?
You see, my parents won't be home tonight.
Why are you rephrasing it like this is a rom-com?
Miss Senjo Gahara had a subtle sense of humor both before and after her rehabilitation. Room 201. I took off my shoes and entered. She was telling the truth. There were no hallways. It was a tidy little 100-square-foot room. A bookshelf and a clothes drawer accounted for most of the furniture. She probably made an effort not to own too many things given the place's size, but then Miss Senjo Gahara never seemed to be someone with many possessions to begin with. Her dad was probably the same way.
The truth is that I used to live in a mansion. I'd let you have borrowed a whole room back in those days. But alas, my princess, this is all I can do for now.
Could you not say that like you're Lupin?
What would you think if I told you I went to every convenience store I could find and spent a total of 90,000 yen on a Lupin toy lottery because I had to have a model of his car?
I would think you have terrible luck. You know, it's kind of calming in here.
Really? Araragi always seems uncomfortable.
What kind of boy stays calm at a girl's house? But I think I like it here. It's like my own house.
Ha.
Miss Senju Bahara's expression said that she didn't get it. She probably didn't. Of course not. Even I didn't. I'd blurted out the words, like I was speaking to myself. What was your own house anyway? Yes, the Hanekawa residence that burned down had been a house I'd lived in for 15 years, making it by definition, or by logical argumentation if we wished, my own house. It was my house, just as I'd uttered as I'd seen it burning to the ground. But why did this place, room 201, Tamakura Apartments, make me feel more relaxed than that hallway? Why did it put my mind at ease?
It doesn't feel like my own house to me, at least. It hasn't been that long since we moved here. But I guess, as far as my last home goes, it's gone.
That was right. The house she used to live in, which no one would have objected to calling a mansion famous in its neighborhood, was now an empty plot of land. No, it wasn't even a plot. Was it a street? I wasn't sure. While it had been from a distance, I was able to get a good look for myself at my house burning down. I wondered how it felt not to be informed of your previous home's extinction. I didn't know. Another thing I didn't know, so I stopped thinking about it. Right, I wasn't going to mind about feeling at ease.
You should take today off from school.
Miss Senjo Gahara advised, taking off her sweat-drenched t-shirt. I knew we were both girls, but she was pretty insouciant about stripping. So much so that I admired her.
I'll take the day off too.
What?
I'm sleepy, as you might expect. Right now, I'd sleep with anyone, even a futon.
What a way to put it.
I can barely move my legs. I know I used to be on the track team, but it's been a long time since then. What about you, Miss Hanekawa? It looks like you had a well-made bed, but you couldn't possibly have gotten a good night's sleep in that place.
Well, I guess you might be right.
You have awful bedhead too.
Could you not talk about that? It's only the second day of our second term, so we ought to go to...
It'd be much stranger for a girl whose house burned down to come to school the next day bright and cheerful, like nothing happened. That's where you could be a little less naive.
She told me sternly, having taken off her jeans and turning to me in her underwear. She looked unwilling to back down. Despite being in her underwear, she couldn't have looked any braver. Or less sexual.
You're not even planning on going to college, right? So you don't need to worry about your attendance record or recommendation letters.
Well, that's true.
But the rules. I wanted to follow the rules. They were the rules.
Just take the day off. If you insist on going to school, you're going to have to defeat me first, Shawshank.
Could you please not give yourself sound effects? Okay, I'll do as you say for today. And to be honest, it'd be a nice break. I'm glad you're forcing me to do this.
I hope so. Being a busybody isn't my forte.
She sounded embarrassed, but actually, her way of being a busybody was very much like her.
Oh, but Miss Senjogahara, what about you? Is it okay for you to take today off too?
Me? Well, I'm planning to get into college as a scholarship candidate. Attendance is one thing, but as far as my report card,
Pretending to hesitate for a brief moment, she whipped out her cell phone. As I began to wonder where she was calling, she pinched her nose and started speaking in a hoarse voice.
Ashina-sensei. This is Senjogahara. I seem to have somehow caught an out-of-season case of the flu. It could be a brand new strain. What's that? A fever? Do I have a fever? Yes, it's sitting a little above 107. It broke my air conditioner just now. I'm pretty sure you could pinpoint me as the cause of this year's heat wave. I can swim in my sweat right now. My body hurts so much it feels like it could explode. I know I'll probably give this to the whole class, but I wanted to ask if I could still come to school today. No? Is that so? I understand that's too bad. I really did want to attend your lesson. Have a nice day.
Ending the call, she wore a guileless look.
I'm all good now.
Monogatari series by Nisio Isin, cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audiobooks, please check out our website, artale.ai. Now, enjoy the story.
Nope, that was hardly all good. The flu. Why would you go out of your way to tell such a lie? What's wrong with just saying you have a cold?
The bigger the lie, the less likely you'll be caught. Don't worry. My primary doctor of long standing can forge a note for me.
I seriously doubt it. What sort of doctor jeopardized his or her medical career to help a high school girl play hooky? For how good of a liar Miss Senjogahara was, she was awful at telling lies. And anyway, won't you put on some clothes already? It'd feel awkward if you kept on standing around in your underwear.
What? But I was planning on taking a shower in a second.
Ah, got it.
Will you be taking one too?
Yes, if you don't mind. Now that she mentioned it, my whole body felt like it was covered in dust. I must have sweat a good bit while I was asleep, and the underwear I'd bought at the 100-yen shop seemed to be in pretty bad shape. The size was a little bit off to begin with. Please go first, though, of course.
Why are you acting so reserved? Let's get in together.
My prompting was met with a proposition, with a big smile on her face, too. A smile as bright as the sun that not even Araragi could have seen before.
There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We're both girls.
No, hold on a second. No, hold on a lot longer than that. I'm getting a bad feeling about this.
Oh, you. I'm not planning anything underhanded. Or are you saying you don't trust your friend, Miss Hanekawa?
I might not trust a friend who uses that line in this situation.
Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not like Kambari. I just want to see you in the nude, and don't intend to do anything more.
Miss Senjogahara was starting to take on some new character traits. While I'd heard about Miss Kambari's preferences before, I was beginning to think that their middle school relationship as the Valhalla duo may not have been as one-sided as I'd been led to believe.
Please, Miss Hanekawa. Please take a shower with me.
Her new character traits were just so cutting edge. Was anyone going to be able to keep up?
I know you and I, as a team, can defeat Sengoku.
You're not supposed to know about her yet. In story. There it was, a meta remark. We needed to be careful. About as careful as I was of Miss Senjogahara. Well, fine. We're both girls, sure, and I'm not particularly opposed to it.
Oh. I didn't expect you to get on board.
Miss Senjogahara reverted to her usual self. I really had no idea how serious she was ever being. It was so ambiguous with her.
I know I was the one to make the offer, but I always thought of you as someone who'd never cross certain lines, even with a friend.
Certain lines, like never letting anyone into your room or never hanging out with anyone outside of school.
Yes.
Well, I don't deny it. I had that side. Maybe you could describe it as trampling into someone else's life, but hating it when others try to intrude on my own. That seemed to be a perfect description of my relationship with Araragi. And that's why things turned out the way they did. But how would it make me look if I tried to distance myself from a girl who cried and pummeled me?
Gah.
Miss Senjogahara blushed. She pouted her lips almost like she was sulking. She was already wonderful back when she never displayed any emotions, but she was even more wonderful now that she showed a full range of them. It was to the point where I wanted to be the one asking her to take a shower together. Or maybe that's going a step too far.
Oh, just then her cell phone, still in her hand, went off. I thought it was our teacher calling back, having realized just how unnatural the excuse had been, but that didn't seem to be the case. To begin with, it was a text.
Who's it from?
Araragi. Judging by what it says, he probably sent it to your phone too.
Huh?
Why don't you check? Use the outlet over there. Don't worry. I won't bill you for the electricity.
If you're trying not to sound stingy, that last bit was counterproductive. As she suggested, I took my phone from my bag and turned it on. Rather than wait for an incoming message, I manually checked for new ones. New messages, minus 957.
Oh, forget all the ones from me. I was so worried.
956 in one night? Nearly all of my inbox's previous messages had been crowded out and was gone from the phone's memory. Was this my fault? Shouldn't I actually be demanding an apology? Thinking so, I rushed to check the newest message, and indeed, the sender was Araji.
Not coming back for a while. Worry.
No subject, no signature. To be frank, it was utterly bare. Not only that, he seemed to be so pressed for time that he couldn't type out the word "don't" correctly or fix the spelling. It was a tense message that made you think he mashed it out under pressure.
While it was expected, he's up to something again, and it looks pretty serious this time. I don't know the details about spring break, but judging by the text, could this be as bad as then, or worse?
You think so too?
Yes. But I guess he's grown in that he did send us this message. He used to be really blinkered.
You're right. Could it have to do with Mayoi? Sure, she was only looking for Aragi to retrieve her forgotten backpack from him, so it might have nothing to do with what he was involved in now, but I just had that feeling for some reason, and I was sure of it.
No luck. I tried calling him, but I can't get through. He is a boy, after all. I guess I don't have to worry too much about him. Once he gets back, I'll just force him to hear me brag about how we showered together.
That doesn't sound like an effective way to harass him.
I can tell him about how your lines are like this, and that is how you are here.
Please stop gesturing. It was indecent, or rather, erotic.
In any case, it seems like we're going to have to take care of this tiger ourselves.
This tiger? The tiger I'd seen on my way to school. The gigantic tiger. The speaking tiger. Now that she mentioned it, she'd said the incident was what had made her excessively worried about me. But that tiger...
My assumption was that the tiger caused the fire, but did it not? Do you know what caused it?
No, they don't know yet. So we don't know.
I see. Then maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Being a former member of the track and field team.
That hardly merited saying it with a dashing look.
All right, Miss Hanekawa. Why don't we go take that shower? We'll even take Araragi's for him.
Let's keep Araragi out of it.
I'll get a good look at your nude body. Enough for both me and him.
Could you just get enough for yourself at the most? Then again, any resistance would have been troublesome.
In fact, now that I really think about it, naked girls or their underwear don't excite him anymore.
Is that true?
Yup. He's at a new stage after all of his experiences in the last few months. Now he says just seeing a girl in a skirt turns him on.
A gaze against which no girl can protect herself.
He says the cloth swaying in the wind is almost too much for him.
It doesn't even need to get flipped. He really was on a different level. Or rather, yeah.
Okay, let's get in there and have fun washing each other's chest.
Don't you mean back?
Miss Hanekawa?
I'd started to peel off my clothes, concerned about this conversation getting dragged out any longer, when Miss Senjogahara abruptly asked me a question. Her expression somewhere between smiling and serious.
Do you still love Araragi?
Yes, I still do. I answered immediately. I think this is a good time for me to discuss Aragi a bit, to discuss Koyomi Aragi. Koyomi Aragi, Miss Senjogahara's boyfriend and my friend. I actually knew about him from before spring break. I don't know everything, but I did know about him. He doesn't realize it himself, but he's quite the celebrity at Naoto High. He stood out, you might say. Like a sore thumb, to be honest. He loves to treat me like a celebrity, but we could go toe-to-toe as far as that goes. Though it's more correct to say he's feared. Yes, people are afraid of him. Just as I hated being treated like a model student, he hates being treated like a delinquent. But really, if you're skipping school whenever you feel like it, not taking classes and tests seriously, or not even taking them at all, then I'm not the only one who'll start thinking of you that way. When I asked him after we became friends for details about what he did when he was skipping school and not caring about classes and tests, which is to say when I casually dug deeper into the matter, it all sounded close to the same as what happened during spring break and Golden Week. All in all, it wasn't as if turning into a vampire over spring break or becoming involved with aberrations had transformed his life. At the root, that had been Koyomi Araragi all along. While his face turns sour and he begins to grumble whenever Karen and Tsukiyi's activities as the Fire Sisters come up, what they're doing, likewise, is nothing more than a rehash of Araragi's middle school days. No, according to his sisters, Aragi's time in middle school was far more precarious. Extracurricular activities that barely towed the line of legality, nay. Fighting on the opposite side of the law wouldn't be too great of an exaggeration. Beyond being taken aback, I'm impressed by the fact that he managed to make it to high school alive. Of course, while he might be doing the same thing in high school that he was in middle school, there does seem to be a major difference in his motivation. He adamantly refuses to talk about it even more than about spring break, and none of his current friends, myself included, know the details, but he appears to have experienced some psychological turning point around the time he was a freshman. I guess it was why he became a washout. To use his word? I'm making it sound like a big deal, but maybe he couldn't keep up academically and that's all it was. There's no rule stating that changes in a person's mindset have to be the outcome of some huge incident. And either way, whether he changes or not, Araragi is Araragi. He's still him even though he's changed completely from the cool person he was when we first met. No matter how much he changes, he's Koyomi Araragi. So these are nothing more than memories of his middle school days when his disposition was more high-tension, upper, hot-blooded memories that Araragi himself has forgotten. In that sense, it could be a very normal event called settling down once you start high school. Normal. Mundane. This event of his. Or spring break, and Golden Week too. And maybe everything with Miss Senjogahara, with Hachikuji, with Miss Kambaru, with Sengoku, and with Karen too was no match for all the things he experienced in middle school. As for today, he was on the move again for some reason. At some point down the line, I fell in love with him, but I'll talk about when that happened a little later. Did we skip another section number? What's going on here? We couldn't have skipped 13 just because it's an unlucky number. Once Araragi complained that while it made a certain amount of sense to skip over 13, whoever first thought to skip 4 in parts of Asia, because it sounds like the word for death had to been incredibly influential to spread a pun so far. That perspective is very him, but it's not like we need to skip 13 just because it makes a certain amount of sense. Well, it doesn't inconvenience me in any particular way, so I'll keep going. I got up after noon. No one woke me up. Miss Senjogahara had been right. Unable to get a good night's sleep in those ruins after all, I'd fallen into a deep slumber that cleanly removed the dull fatigue entangled somewhere inside my body. I was a bit on the surprised end to find Miss Senjogahara's sleeping face in front of me when I woke up, though. No, not a bit. I was pretty seriously shocked. I can only describe it as a feast for the eyes. What a handsome face it was. Something about a beauty with her eyes shut offers up a different flavor from when she's awake. Miss Senjogahara's sleeping face, in particular, was so well formed it almost appeared crafted. So smooth like it was made of porcelain, it also had an undeniable sensuality that only nature offered. I found my heart racing before I realized it. Thump, thump, thump. I wasn't tired anymore, and there was no way I could stay half asleep anyway with my blood pressure rocketing the moment I woke up. So Aragi was getting to hog her sleeping face these days? I blushed at myself for my own adult-themed thought. I felt like an idiot. Actually, I was obviously an idiot. No, maybe not. Even Aragi couldn't hug her sleeping face yet because she was living with her dad, her father. He'd seen more of his daughter's sleeping face than anyone else and watched over it.
Oh,
Miss Senjogahara opened her eyes all of a sudden. She seemed to be less waking up than coming back to life. Maybe. She was having her switch flipped on, booted up. Apparently she wasn't the type to be very still asleep either, even though she came across as hypotensive. There's actually no casual relationship between low blood pressure and rising and shining, they say. If anything, it has more to do with low blood sugar.
Good morning, Miss Hanekawa.
Good morning, Miss Senjogahara.
Though I doubt it's the time of day to be using that expression.
You're right, not at this hour.
What time is it?
1:30
AM? PM?
p.m., of course. How long did she think she'd slept?
time for a flashback after that.
After that, the two of us really did take a shower. It was my first time ever doing so with anyone else, so I'll let you know that many embarrassing, clumsy moments were had. Hence, Miss Senjogahara took the lead entirely and ended up washing me all over. She had practiced hands and a veteran's moves. She was used to flirting with other girls. Or, that's the impression I got. I couldn't take it in silence, however, and washed her all over right back. There we were in the not-too-big shower, quite literally naked. And I'm not sure exactly how to put this, but I feel like we crossed some line. I, who always set boundaries, crossed a line. You might call it a turning point. At least, maybe there was no longer any reason to act too reserved around Miss Senjogahara. While she'd forced me to come along with her, to tell the truth, I'd still been reluctant about staying over at someone else's house. Now, I could think I'd be a bother to her for just one day. I was able to. I honestly felt that way. For a very long time, I had done such as, what do we mean by honest? What do we mean by feel? There was no end to it when you thought about it too deeply. Come to think of it, Miss Senjogahara was also someone who'd built firm walls in her heart. Back when she was called the cloistered princess, she'd never have let me stay over or shower with her, let alone spent all night running around town searching for me. Considering the weight of all she'd overcome in the past few months, I felt pathetic for having just as many experiences but not overcoming a thing. Right. I haven't overcome a thing, not even after the commotion over Golden Week, not even after that day before the Culture Festival. I haven't grown. I haven't changed. Which is why I thought, I'm so jealous of Miss Senjogahara and love her so much, and can't bring myself to hate her. I honestly felt that way. Having frolicked in the shower for about 30 minutes, no one was around to stop us. We then exited into the bathroom, refreshed. We wiped each other's bodies and put on underwear.
I can understand having reservations about putting on my underwear, but could you at least borrow my pajamas? I'll throw out those sweats that I fear you bought at some kind of discount store. Their design would stupefy a stuper.
Huh? You don't like them?
They're awful. Those clothes weren't made with any human wearers in mind, and are exclusively for mannequins. Or maybe I should call them mock-ups created to test clothes hangers.
She was going to go that far? With no mirrors in the abandoned cram school, I was never able to check how I looked in them, but was Miss Senjogahara crying when she woke me from my sleep on my handmade bed because of what I was wearing? Really? I can borrow your pajamas?
Go ahead. I'm well stocked when it comes to clothes.
Then I think I will. For my underwear, I'd broken out what I'd bought at the 100-yen shop. I put my arms through the sleeves of the pajamas that Miss Senjogahara went to get from the dresser. It was a strange feeling. Wearing another person's clothes despite being clothed, I felt incredibly liberated, like I'd allowed something. Miss Senjogahara was tall, which meant she wore larger-sized clothing than me, so they did feel unnecessarily baggy.
And yet it looks tight around your chest. It's wonderful. You never let me down.
It doesn't feel tight. They felt normal for pajamas, and when had I gotten her hopes up in the first place? I waited for her to get into her pajamas, and then we took turns blow-drying each other's hair. It didn't take much time at all. Both of us had worn our hair pretty long during first term, but basically had short bobs now. Soon they were dry. I felt a bit dissatisfied by the fact.
Say, Miss Hanekawa, you've been growing your hair out ever since you cut it after the culture festival, haven't you?
Oh, I guess I might not have gone to a hairdresser yet.
Are you going to wear it long again?
I'm not sure. I only noticed once it was short, but long hair can actually take less work to keep up in some ways, don't you think?
Perhaps I don't entirely disagree.
Right?
Like getting bedhead.
Right? So maybe I should just grow it out again, considering what I'll be doing after graduation, you know?
Ah, after graduation. To be honest, I don't know about it. I certainly don't think you're in any need of a university education, of course, but college isn't just a place to study. The way I see it, travelling around the world and going to college are like the same thing.
The topic was one that had come up many times before, but the reason I liked her so much was that she was willing to say these kinds of things out loud. That's right, I'm not going to college. It was why I didn't have to worry about my attendance record or my report card. I intend to spend 2 years or so traveling the world after I graduate, and my plans for it are close to finished. Of course, they're pretty slapdash, since scheduling every little thing out would make it feel like I'm on a package tour or something. At this moment in time, the only people who know about my post-graduation wishes are Arariji and Miss Senjogahara. Arariji, being the person that he is, didn't try to stop me. Miss Senjogahara, being the person that she is, gently opposed it unequivocally.
And I only feel more against it given how careless you must be to stay over in those ruins. Like there was nothing wrong with it. You could even say my position has hardened. Not every country in the world is as safe as Japan, right? If something terrible happens, it'll be too late. Okay? You should act under the assumption that every boy in the world is after that skin of yours.
Specifically my skin?
Picturing it getting burned as you walk through the tropics is enough to make me despair. Maybe it'd be best if I put a collar on you and locked you up in a cage.
Miss Senjogahara, you're trying to do something awful to me here, in a country as safe as Japan.
Don't you think you're just being difficult? Though I don't know if it's toward Araragi, or toward Mr. Oshino, or toward me, or maybe someone else, like those parents of yours.
She made me fall silent for a minute. She made me think. Maybe she was right. No. I'm not being difficult. I wouldn't decide on a path just to be
I see. I hope not.
I just want to make up for what I'm lacking, that's all. Oh, I know what you'd call it these days. A journey of self-discovery.
Self-discovery.
Though I did already meet myself over Golden Week. So maybe it'd be more accurate to say I'm going on a new journey of self-creation.
Well, I doubt I could overturn any firmly sworn resolve of yours anyway. If I'm being hard about this, then you're a rock. But if you start to feel like you don't want to, you don't have to. You can even turn back mid-trip. We won't find that embarrassing. Yes, down deep, Aragi must want to stop you too.
He must?
Like a wall of steel.
But I wondered. I still wasn't quite sure how Araragi felt about me, but in any case, that was the kind of girl talk about not very girl talky subjects we had as we finished drying each other's hair. Miss Senjogahara proceeded to take a futon set out of the closet.
There's another pair, my dad's, but I don't know about making a high school girl sleep in bedding that a middle-aged man past 40 is always using. All right, I guess there's no way around it. Miss Hanekawa, let's sleep together in mine.
That conclusion didn't take long to come to.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. I won't do anything to you. We'll just be sleeping on the same futon. I won't lay a finger on you.
She was pulling off an impressive feat, losing my trust by emphasizing how trustworthy she was.
I won't use you as a hug pillow, Miss Hanekawa.
I feel like I'm learning why you're able to go out with Araragi. The possibility that it wasn't me but Miss Senjogahara who'd made him that way was rapidly rearing its head too. And when I really thought about it, I recalled that he was already pretty bad by the time we met during spring break. Okay, so it wasn't my fault. All right, sure. No need to say all that. I wasn't even worried.
Really? Thank you. Please go ahead and use my pillow then. I'll use my dad's.
Wait. Right. Wouldn't you sleeping on your father's futon be another option here?
What? I wouldn't be able to sleep with you if I used my dad's.
I see. A very logical point. Hard to argue against.
Also, I'm actually a daddy's girl, so I'd be too excited to get any sleep if I used his futon.
You're being too open about this, Miss Senjogahara. What a family. Then again, it absolutely wasn't the kind of quip I was allowed to make as someone who didn't have the first idea of that whole concept.
Well, every home has its own family relationships, and there's clearly something abnormal about Araragi and his sisters.
Yeah, abnormal. I won't mince words. Their sibling dynamic is hazardous. In constant battle with ethics, it's been winning a string of crushing victories lately. The balance of that war is in extreme peril.
I only met them the other day, but compared to the level of respect that Karen and Tsukihi pay to their brother, the way I feel about my dad easily counters commonplace.
While you couldn't deny that she was offering an even worse example in order to normalize herself, let's not pursue the topic. It just isn't for me to pursue when I never became a family with those two after living in the same house with them and spending 15 years under the same roof. Even the house was gone now. How could you be a family with no place to call home?
Well, why don't we go to bed, Miss Hungarian Goose Down Quilter, Miss Hanekawa?
Who accidentally says Hungarian goose down quilt instead of Hanekawa? Hungarian and Hanekawa both had 4 syllables and started with the same letter, but that was it. Not to mention all the words that came after. It had to be intentional, but even with her now expressive face, it was hard to tell just how serious she was being. It was 8 in the morning at that point. We could still make it to school if we sprinted there, but meekly notifying my teacher that I'd be missing class. I went to bed with Miss Senjogahara. Good night.
Good night.
Those words, too. I hadn't spoken them in so long that it felt like my first time. You might say good morning to a Roomba, but you wouldn't say good night.
End of flashback.
1:30 in the afternoon. Seems like we got a lot of sleep. Did you just wake up too, Miss Hanekawa?
Yeah, more or less.
Ah. I never imagined I'd get to wake up on the same futon as you.
Could you not say things that sound like they could be pillow talk?
I'm such a high-strung person that I can't sleep very deeply, but it feels like I was knocked right out. Could it have been the pillow?
When you say that, are you talking about your dad's pillow, or are you talking about your hug pillow? Then again, I was in no position to talk. I slept so soundly myself that I didn't have any dreams at all. I don't know if it was thanks to Miss Senjogahara's pillow, or the futon, or the hug. No, stop. There really wasn't any hugging going on.
All right then. Aren't you hungry? I was thinking of making us break for no. Lunch.
Oh, it sounds good. I'd love to join you.
Is there anything you can't eat?
No.
Kay.
Miss Senjogahara hummed as she donned an apron. She seemed excited for some reason. Maybe she liked cooking. I recalled Araraji complaining to me that it was hard to get her to cook him anything, but I also realized I hadn't heard anything about that lately. Did it mean he'd finally savored a home-cooked meal prepared by his lover?
Miss Hanekawa?
Yes.
Would you get turned on if I suddenly stripped down to nothing but this apron?
I'd get pissed off. I see, she nodded, pulling ingredients out from the refrigerator. It looked like I wouldn't have to get pissed off. I felt relieved, because I didn't know how to.
By the way, Miss Hanekawa, did you know bean sprout uses the same character as for mole? I've found them delicious ever since I learned that.
Well, I think they kept tasting the same to me.
In which case, maybe calling a kid a bean sprout wouldn't be as insulting as calling them a beanpole.
Bean sprout. To be honest, it wasn't a very funny or smart observation, but she did have a knife pointed my way. I had to pick my reaction wisely. Though blades really did suit her, I had to admit.
Do you like your toast with butter or cream cheese?
Oh, so you've already decided we're having bread, not rice.
Of course we are. I'm preparing you a real spread here. Why else would people talk about eating 3 square meals a day? If we were supposed to eat rice, wouldn't it be 3 round meals?
I think they make round bread too. And you could always just say breakfast, lunch, and dinner like a normal person. There seem to be a lot of holes in Miss Senjogahara's logic.
You're right about that. It's a logical hole that 3 round meals sounds like something you'd eat while watching a short fight.
No, there are bigger holes here than that. Anyway, do you really keep both butter and cream cheese here?
Of course not. We just have a mysterious blended product.
Mysterious, you say?
You know, that stuff that comes in a tub.
What's your point?
The first time I tried it, I couldn't believe it wasn't butter.
You're about 15 years late for that joke to be funny? Yes, there really was a time when such statements about margarine were in fashion.
Don't worry, my dad is really picky when it comes to bread. We even have our own bread machine. This thing's expensive, you know. Doesn't it look out of place in this kitchen?
She was right. It did. If I may, it looked more expensive than any of the furniture there. We didn't have one at our house, so I secretly began to get my hopes up.
Miss Hanekawa, do you cook often?
Yes, I do. I didn't know how much I wanted to go into the topic because giving too straight an answer always got people creeped out by the Hanekawa family situation. But she was looking after me, so it seemed only right to give her at least a few details. Not to mention that she'd met the two who should be called my parents. There was no point in awkwardly trying to keep up appearances here. I'd even told her about sleeping in the hallway. No. This wasn't about things seeming only right or having no point. I simply wanted to tell her. I didn't want to hide much from someone who'd been so worried for me. Everything I ate, I made for myself.
Oh, there was a time in my life like that too. My mom and I weren't on good terms.
They got divorced, right?
Yes. I haven't met her since then, but I do wonder where that woman is now, and what she's doing. I just hope she's happy.
Despite her words, her tone didn't sound particularly concerned. Her knife continued to chop vegetables the entire time. I don't know if that was natural or unnatural.
There's a lot that happens in any home, really.
Yeah, you're right. Cutting the heat on the pot just as the bread maker let us know that our bread was ready, she began plating our food. She probably had this routine calculated out. While I did ask her if there was anything I could do to help, she refused to the end, insisting that I let her handle it all. She disliked people getting in the way of her rhythm. Soon, the low dining table featured a full lineup of plates. I did at least help her carry over the dishes. Thank you for this meal.
Thank you for this meal.
Bread, tea, and vegetables with chicken. I was a bit happy for whatever reason that she'd made such basic home-cooked food instead of anything too fancy. Explaining the feeling would take quite a bit of work, though, so I decided not to convey it to her. We ate. Oh, this is good.
Really? It is? Araragi didn't seem very happy. To be honest, I was prepared for you to bash it.
Bash. And wait, Araragi didn't seem very happy. He needed to work on being better boyfriend material. Even if the food wasn't to his taste, he should at least pretend to enjoy it. Though it was very like him not to. Well, I think it tastes good. Then again, taste is a personal thing.
So in other words, you and I have similar tastes. In food and in men.
I spit out my tea. It was a horrible display of manners on my part. Miss Senjogahara, you're sometimes too open about...
Well, no. I thought if we really want to be honest with each other, it might be best to go ahead and talk about this with you.
It feels like one wrong move could drive a wedge between us, but okay. She never backed down from a challenge, did she? Then again, I was also glad that she broached the subject, because it was a hard one for me to broach, even if I tried. So, Miss Senjogahara, how about we just put it out there and say what each of us love about Araragi?
No, we shouldn't put it out there, in case this conversation leaks somehow. It'd give him a big head.
I see. She was very stern when it came to her boyfriend. It seemed like she was no carrot and all stick. What should we talk about then?
Well, why don't we tell each other what we hate about Araragi?
Sounds good. The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of our truest feelings. I'd let myself get excited over bad-mouthing someone.
I know it's already late enough to start getting ready for dinner. But why don't we talk about the future?
We both felt rejuvenated for some reason. Supple. What exactly was this sense of solidarity? What do you mean? The future.
Your future. Okay. You'll stay over at my house tonight. What will you do starting tomorrow? Do you have some kind of lead?
Well, If I said, I'll just go back to that abandoned cram school, I guess. Even as a joke, she'd probably smack me. Actually, I could even see her kicking me. Dash, don't!
I see. To tell you the truth, I'd like you to continue to stay here after tomorrow. I'd like to keep you under my control.
Your control?
Under my watch.
I'm not sure if that correction helped much. It felt like the same thing. It must have been the truth, though. She was trying to say that she was worried about me.
But you can see for yourself just how cramped my home is, and I'm not going to ask you to go to sleep, wake up, and change clothes in the same room as my dad after he gets back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a little... It definitely gave me pause. Plus, it would probably be a pretty massive annoyance as a father to have your daughter's classmates staying over in the same room.
I mean, whatever would I do if my dad fell in love with you?
That's what you're worried about.
The day may come when I'll have to call you Mom.
No, it won't.
Excuse me, are you saying my dad isn't good enough for you?
She glared at me for real. What a bothersome character trait. It seemed like she wasn't lying about being a daddy's girl. When I considered that, or even if I didn't, I wasn't going to be able to stay at her place for much longer. So, what to do?
I think he could take it for a day or two, though. We could just have him stand outside while you change or something.
There's no way I could ever ask someone's dad to do that. You realize? What kind of guest would that make me?
By the way, Miss Hanekawa, what's your read on what'll happen next with the Hanekawa family?
Those people. I didn't have to force myself to call them my father and mother in front of Miss Senjo Gahara anymore. So I deliberately chose the term those people. Those people won't be able to live out of a hotel forever, so they'll look for a place to rent soon. It has to be the cheaper option. They're going to be getting a fire insurance payout, so I assume we'll live out of that rented place while they use the money to rebuild a house.
Rebuild a house, huh? I wonder what that takes.
If it's the same size as the old one, probably around 30 million yen.
Oh, no. I was talking about time, not money.
What an embarrassing mistake. I'd gone straight to how much. It depends on how they make it, but when you factor in all the paperwork, maybe half a year?
Half a year. In other words, you'll have graduated high school by then, and we'll be off to travel the world.
Dash, I guess so. I wouldn't be ready in time. No. I didn't know what was supposed to be ready in time or not for what year. The house I had lived in for 15 years was burned to the ground now, would be a different house rebuilt. Everything had been lost. That was all. There was no making it in time or not. It was simply the wrong time to make anything of it.
Well, let's forget about 6 months from now. You'll have somewhere you can stay if they hurry to find a place to rent, right?
Yes, a hallway.
A hallway? Oh, right.
That was the only reaction, though.
Well, a lot of things happen in every house,
Yes, in every house.
which means you'll need a place to stay until that rental gets figured out. Did your textbooks and notebooks go up in flames too?
Up in flames. The only things that made it out were what I brought to school that day, my writing tools, and my wallet. But I think our teachers will let me borrow a textbook if I asked.
I see. So there's no need for me to worry about that, either.
As she said this, Miss Senjo Bahara operated her cell phone with one hand. I couldn't see what she was doing from my angle, but she didn't seem to be using the calendar anymore, judging by how fast she was hitting its keys. Was she writing an email?
Miss Hanekawa, I just had a good idea. Would you like to hear it?
A good idea?
You could even call it a scheme. Call me Hitagi the Schemer. A series spanning collaboration that readers could only dream of.
Seems more recycled than collaborative to me.
So it should take a week at the very longest until your parents find somewhere to rent, and if that's all, I think I could make something happen.
To be honest, this idea, scheme or whatever it was, didn't feel particularly enticing in the worst case. I just had to go to the hotel where those two were staying. In other words, this is about me being selfish. Not something worth having Miss Senjogahara fret and ponder over. So it wasn't the idea itself. Rather, the fact that she thought one up made me so happy that I said, I'd like to hear it. Would you please tell me?
Oh, I'm not so sure. Should I, or shouldn't I?
Over the course of her rehabilitation, Miss Senjogahara's once subdued personality had grown the slightest bit obnoxious.
After that, the two of us had dinner. For your reference, we cooked rice. Not only did the kitchen have a bread maker, it had a very nice rice cooker. Square meals are important, but so are rounded diets apparently, before taking another shower together and washing each other. From there, Hitagi Senjogahara and Tsubasa Hanekawa went to bed before the clock struck 10, in part to help foster our bravery for the coming day.
And now it was my turn to wake up. By my, I of course mean the Nio aberration based off of the afflicting cat that you all Nio Black Hanekawa, as that Hawaiian shirted jerk Nia made. I snuck out of the sheets without making a noise. Unlike vacuum cleaners, cats specialize in moving around silently. And then, I stretched my paws. I think this goes without saying, but the reason we've been skipping chapters when my Meister Tsubasa Hanekawa goes to sleep is that I've been showing up like this. I'm a Naya-betration, so it's not something I'm familiar with. But according to my master's knowledge, sleep is important to rest Naya, just the body, but the psyche too. I don't think much about anything. And I don't have anything close to a psyche, so it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it sounds like thinking can be a pretty big burden. And that's why humans have to spend 33% of their time sleeping. A third of their lives. Everyone sleeps. Even my master sleeps. But you see, with all that happened, what would be called normal sleep is nigh longer enough rest for my Meister. I don't know how much of this my master realizes Neo. Actually, even an idiot like me realized this one. But my master is just so dull to her own pain that she doesn't realize the incredible shock dealt to her psyche, which is to say her heart, when the house she lived in for 15 years burned down, which is why I came out. Black Hanekawa. There was Golden Week then before the Culture Festival. What's that anyway? And now this, which makes 3. Of course, you could say that the me that showed up during Golden Week, the me that showed up before the Culture Festival, and the current me are all different cases or different people, if you want to say it like a human, or different cats. Of course, every change in pattern of a Black Hanekawa would seem so minuscule to a human that there'd be no night to identify each one, just like how I can't tell humans apart. In other words, if you were going to use a Nye article to talk about me, it would be A, not the... Maybe it'd be easier to understand if I said there's nya plural form for Black Hanekawa. If a human saw 3 Yeti, they wouldn't say Yeti I, Yeti B, and Yachty C. No, they'd just call them all Yeti. So it's the same with me. Nyat Black Hanekawa C, and Nyat Black Hanekawa 3, just Black Hanekawa. Nice to meet ya! Meow, meow, meow. I took a look at the mirror. My hair had turned bright white. Ears? I had the piercing eyes of a cat. I never had a mirror or anything near me when I first woke up at the abandoned cram school, and I was so busy figuring out my situation anyway. And when I woke up this morning, I was too sleepy to do anything. I'm nocturnal, so my brain doesn't work that good when the sun is out. So this was my first time seeing myself in a... The ears are charming in an all-new way now that my hair's short. I know humans say, rain's on the way. If you see a cat wash its face, but this didn't have anything to do with the weather. I left the bathroom and grabbed the key sitting on top of the dresser. I think it goes without saying that it was the key to the... Give me a break! I can at least use a key! Don't you underestimate human-based aberrations. I snuck around so that I wouldn't wake up Hitachi Senjo Bahara, this woman who seems to be my Meister's friend, and silently opened the door before locking it just as silently. Well, I say friend, but I think she was supposed to be my Meister's enemy too. It seemed silly to move around so carefully when I thought about that, but I was just going to do as my Meister wanted here. Because my Meister... at least... once resented this woman. Naya once. Mia! I didn't wear shoes. They're so hard to prowl around in. Why would you ever wear something that keeps you from using it? Meow, meow, meow. Naya, I'm sure some of you are worried that my master isn't getting any rest at all if I'm Naya while she's asleep. Thank you for your concern. But Naya to worry. It's all okay. Because, as I put it, I balance out my master's mental state, if anything. My master's psyche is soothed merely by me coming out. Physical fatigue isn't a problem because I'm an aberration. Even when I'm in a human body, I mew it using a different set of rules than a human. So my master's body should actually be getting even more rested than if she was just sleeping. Really, just think about it. No matter how good of a bed maker my master is, one can get a good night's rest and wake up ache-free after sleeping on cardboard boxes wrapped around a desk. That's bed. It's a bedhead generator. And even if sleeping on the same futon with a friend who'd cry for you is better beyond comparison, even if it would be moving if you got a good night's sleep that way, you normally don't sleep as well when you use an unfamiliar pillow in bedding. But she slept soundly and got a nice... I'm an embodiment of my master's stress, which is to say a symbol of her fatigue. Just being cut loose like this is enough to give my master peace of mind. So I may not be able to take all the credit, but you can at least say that it's partially thanks to me that my master doesn't know what it means to be still asleep. I'm sure it was a coincidence. But whatever dirty little human compared me to a nightmare made a keen-eyed point, because I'm like sleep itself to my master. A dream. Sure, I went around draining the energy of every human I could get my paws on over Golden Week, because I couldn't do enough to relax my master, but no need to worry. I wasn't planning on doing anything that outrageous this time around. There'd be no point anyway. To put it like that, any-oing little human, I only appear like this as a after effect of a Nai aberration, as something like a Nayako just a Fenny Yamanyan in the end. Like El Nino, or La Nina. There's basically nothing I can do. I can keep her from being terrorized by her nightmares by coming out like this. That's it. It's all I can do to care for my master's mental health, which is to say, I'm as good as nothing. But then again, there's a reason for every aberration according to that Hawaiian-shirted jerk, so even if there is nothing I can do, I think there's meaning in me being here like this, like a Nayeko, like a simple illusion. I can't do the things that I can't do, so I just have to do the things I can, meow, as much as I can. Niall, that I say this me and the previous me really were different cases. I harbored Niall feeling whatsoever of wanting to force things forward, of wanting to solve things with violence. I was warmer now, if I do say so myself. I guess it's normal for a cat to be warmed, though. Niall, maybe Niot. Maybe it was my master who grew warmer. We can talk about humans and aberrations all day, but in the end, my master and I are one and the same. So if she gets softer, I do too. I know my master has doubts about that Hitagi Senjogahara woman's rehabilitation, and I know that he annihilating little human Koyomi or Aragi, but I think my master has also been pretty rehabilitated compared to Nayat too long ago. Rehabilitated or maybe restructured. I can observe my master from inside her heart, from her inner mind, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about. Her family situation was her family situation, after all. It would be a miracle if she ever went off the rails. Becoming a model student as a way of going off the rails is so very much my master. But she stopped acting too much like one ever since she cut her hair and took off her glasses. I'm sure lots of people think lots of things about that. But if you ask me, I'd say it's nothing short of great. That's one place where I agree with Hitachi Senjogahara. I'm sure I'll disappear someday too. I'll fade away into Nio. This was a transition so that my master can fully become who she is. Me, I'm just like a adolescent fantasy. At the latest, by the time she comes back from traveling the world, I'm sure she'll have forgotten me and left me behind like the imaginary friend that anyone dreams up when they're little. I'd be lying if I said that doesn't make me feel sad, but it was my role from the start. I'm not planning on defying that. There are partings just as there are meetings. It's the same with aberrations. So I just have to do the things I can... Meow. Instead of going down the stairs, I leapt onto the roof of the Tamikura apartments and looked all around me 360 degrees. Neo, maybe here? So, if you're curious why I slipped out of the futon and left the room, if you want to know what I wanted to do if Nio drained someone's energy, it of course wasn't to go on a walk at night or anything. I should have gone straight to work like this when I came out of the ruins, and when I came on morning. But I had to make preparations, okay? Nio. Nile long after. I found my target and flew into the air without a sound as soon as I did. Cats can fly, you see. Okay, I know that's supposed to be birds. But Black Hanekawa can jump higher than a mountain, careful Nyack to make a sound, though. I wasn't going to be leaping quite that high this time. And if I really tried to jump, it'd destroy the apartment under. It was still enough to jump about 500 yards. I was far any away that I didn't have to be silent anymore, and I landed with a thump hard yole to make you think my feet might get stuck in the asphalt. It was perfectly dark on the street. Nio, a single car drove through at night, and in front of me, there stood a tiger.
Afflicting cat! No! You are no afflicting cat! But nor are you anything else! Explain yourself! What are you, trelves?
The tiger, too impossibly big to be a real tiger, so enormous it threw off your perspective, tilted its head at me, confused as it said this. A tiger tilting its head in confusion was a pretty rare sight. I wanted to snap a photo and post it to my blog. Afflicting cat is close enough, knew it quite, if you went into the details, or if you went into the fundamentals. But, well, you're not too wrong.
Is that so? You seem to be something else entirely to me. That
The tiger narrowed its eyes and didn't even grin. Herm. I know you shouldn't judge aberrations by appearances, but my first impression was that we weren't going to get along.
Trevolet, the aberration I know as the afflicting cat, is a slight one with so little presence it may as well not be there. But you Tevel.
Well, can't argue with that. Nothing I could say there. Afflicting cats have so little there it might be better to call them narrations and aberrations. And even if they didn't, I got the feeling that in this thing's view, most aberrations may as well not be there. Because, as I assume you not, we've all got a lot going on, even someone like me.
I see. Well, I don't really care about you.
It really said it. Niall, that was...
But I must ask what it is you want of me. I am a tiger. You, as a kindred aberration, must know what it means to block my way.
A kindred aberration? Niall, was my turn to tilt my head. This one and me should have come from completely different places. No, maybe that's not what it meant. Kindred is animals, simply. Cats and tigers is what it must have meant. Niall, I understood. Well, of course I know, but I'm nioed here to block your way or anything. Nioed one teeny tiny bit. I'm nioed very smart, but I at least nioed where I stand here.
Indeed, you must not be, but I am not so sure you truly know where you stand.
How rude! It really did like to talk for
So then, why do you stand there? Crass.
Well, I'm just here to announce something. I don't care one bit what you came to this town for, or why you're still here. Go ahead and do whatever you need to do. I'm not interested one bit in what you really are, but if you do anything more to harm my master, I'll kill you.
I see. I thought I had seen you somewhere before. So you're that girl. That girl has been possessed by you.
No, I wouldn't say possessed. Maybe if I was a normal afflicting cat. But I'm like her. It'd be closer to call it a simulation, or no munification. I am my meister, and my meisters is the dominant one, of course, but I might actually have more control over our actions. Because I'm the fundamental primitive core of my
I don't care. An aberration who assists a human then. Remarkable. You are not. But then you ought to know better than any other aberration. An aberration's traits cannot be suppressed. The problem lies with the seer, not the seen. I am a tiger, and this master of yours saw me. That is all that matters.
Saying so, the tiger glared at me hard. That very instant, I leapt. No, I thought like we were just about to get into a fight. This tiger was awfully violent, awfully simplistic. And so I leapt. I flew. Nyada stepped backward. I took off with everything I had like I really wanted to soar. But once I tumbled onto the ground somewhere on the outskirts of town, after more than 5 minutes of airtime, I have no idea how it got there first, but in front of me, there stood a tiger.
Futile. It is all futile. I am a tiger, and that woman has seen me. That alone is of import. I am a tiger, and have already begun.
If I'd made a declaration of war, the tiger's words were an ultimatum.
Could you please wipe your feet before you come in?
Waiting for me when I returned to the apartment was Itagi Senjogahara, now holding a wet towel. I thought I'd open the door without alerting anyone to my presence, and of course without making a sound, but it seemed like the woman had already arisen.
It's easy for me to wake up in the morning. It's because I'm high-strung. Didn't I tell you?
Well, Mia to me.
But you're Miss Hanekawa, aren't you?
Here, Hitagi Senjogahara held out the wet towel like it was a normal thing to do. I just took it. I wiped my feet just like she told me to. I wasn't paying much attention, but it made sense to me when I saw the towel turn black. I must have been pretty dirty.
I guess it is the first time I'm meeting you. Black Hanekawa, right?
Sure, that's good, Eniab.
I see. Oh, I just thought we'd shake hands because we're meeting for the first time.
Do you Nayo, listen to a word anyone says to you. My special trait as an afflicting cat is my always active energy drain. Touch me, and I'll suck up your vitality. I'm not giving anyone a handshake.
Energy drain. Yes, I've heard. But it's not like you suck it all up in a single moment, right? I should at least be able to shake your hand.
I started to say something, but decided not.
Ugh.
She groaned for that one moment, and that was all. Any old lassitude to make a lot of people fall to their knees should have been assaulting her whole body, but she didn't even show any sign of distress. True, my energy drain wasn't enough to make someone pass out after a single meowment, but most people couldn't take it, and I'd shaken her hand knowing that. I guess my plan had failed. Still, and while I'm sure these were my master's feelings, some part of me went naturally. Naturally, this woman. Well, and of course my master too, it's Nio like either of us wanted to see her in pain. But something about the Niome reaction of hers tore into my heart.
Nice to meet you. And please, take care. Please take care of Miss Hanekawa.
How did that happen? We skipped 3 sections at once this time. What happened while I was asleep? Everything's okay, right? Nothing weird happened, did it?
Good morning, Miss Hanekawa.
Something about her expression seemed absent-minded, in complete contrast to the day before. No, maybe not absent-minded or sleepy. It was like she was just plain exhausted. But what kind of condition was she in to be tired as soon as she woke up? It's not as if she could have had her energy drained by an afflicting cat.
You're up early, Miss Hanekawa. It's only 6.
Yup. Today I had really relied on my circadian rhythm, though I could have slept in a little later because Miss Senjogahara's home was closer to Naoitsuhai than mine. But it's not like waking up early ever hurt anybody. Well, you're up too, Miss Senjogahara.
I go on a little run in the mornings. It's not easy for me to keep this figure, you know. I've got the kind of body that turns anything I eat straight into flesh.
Straight into flesh. Was that her roundabout way of saying she put on weight easily? Then again, she once had some special circumstances relating to her weight, so maybe she was particularly fussy about managing it. It wasn't as if she was a model, though, and she'd look more charming if she were a little thicker, in my humble opinion. Was there really a need for her arms and legs to be that skinny? Looking at them, I got scared that they might snap.
I'm jealous of you, Miss Hanekawa. You've got the kind of body that turns whatever you eat straight into chest.
Straight into chest? What kind of a body was that? Listen, it's not exactly easy for me either. It's tough being a girl. After washing her face, Miss Senjogahara changed into shorts and a t-shirt and began stretching for her run. Wow, she was flexible. I was doubting my own eyes. Her body had wobbled around like it was an overdone 3D animation. It was incredible. Like she was a mollusk. Sorry, can I try touching you?
Do you mean my right breast or my left one?
No, I mean your back.
My right shoulder blade? Or my left one?
I don't have whatever kind of ultra-specific fetish you're talking about. She was really quick. That was a skill I didn't have. I walked behind her as I thought this and pushed her back as she did a perfect split. Her torso was now flat on the floor. 0 resistance, 0 friction, like there'd been no need to push at all. Why is your body this flexible? Should joints have this much motion? Actually, I don't even know if your joints are connected to begin with.
Stretching can be addictive. And I mean that in a masochistic way.
Did you really need to add that clarification?
I can't get enough of the feeling of everything inside my body creaking and straining.
You don't seem to be straining very much, though.
There's no strain left in it any longer. Stretching is so boring now.
It was boring for her. True, you only get more flexible the more you stretch. The fruits of her training during her time on the track team, or maybe the traces of it.
Miss Hanekawa, would you like to run with me?
No, but I'll make breakfast in the meantime. We can eat together once you get back.
Do you not like to run? Musically uplifting.
That's not it. If anything, I'm someone who likes exercise. I even have a little habit of running in the mornings, though I don't do it every day. It was just that I could imagine the scene after getting back being yet another shower with Miss Senjogahara, and I thought we might not need that much fan service crammed in. It'd be indecent and in more ways than one. Actually, why don't you also take a break from running today? You look tired to me.
I want to run the most when I'm feeling tired.
I guess you are a jock after all. A former member of the track team. Her spirit had been tempered too. It didn't seem worth it to try and stop her, so after helping her with her stretches, though it didn't do anything you could call helping in the end, I saw her off and went to the kitchen.
May.
Miss Senjogahara made an indescribable face as soon as she put a cucumber from her salad into her mouth. I thought it would be wrong to tamper with someone else's kitchen too much, so I'd prepared a very simple breakfast. Leftover bread from the day before with hot milk, a simple salad, and a fried egg on top of bacon. When I laid it out on the table, though, she did comment on how good it looked. Everything was fine as she chugged down her milk, but her demeanor changed when she put the first bite of salad into her mouth. Like a switch had been flicked.
Could I ask you a question, Miss Hanekawa?
What is it?
Oh no. Hold on. First, let me be sure that this unbelievable situation really is happening.
She continued to fill her cheeks with more salad. She kept going, silently eating her eggs and bread. The grave expression stuck to her face the entire time. I'm not an... I could tell pretty much what she was thinking based on her reaction, but... Had I messed something up? I started to think, and then I took my own fearful bite of the food I'd prepared. Nothing seemed particularly strange. At least, it didn't seem like I'd done something like burn the eggs or get dish detergent in the food. Then what could have been bothering her so?
Miss Hanekawa, do you know what dressing is?
Huh? Well, of course I know what it is. The stuff that people sometimes put on salads.
I see. There are 3 competing factions in Japan when it comes to fried eggs. People who put Worcestershire sauce on them, people who put soy sauce on them, and people who put salt and pepper on them. What's your stance there?
Oh, I've heard of those people before. Yes, apparently some people put things on fried eggs.
Yup. Did you notice the spread and the jam in the fridge?
I saw them, but we had those just yesterday. Oh, oops, did you want to use them? But rather than get up to grab butter or anything else from the refrigerator, she tore off another piece of bread, put it in her mouth, and silently chewed, silently.
I have a few more questions. They're about your culinary lifestyle.
My culinary lifestyle? I think my eating habits are very ordinary. But okay.
How much soy sauce do you use on sushi?
None.
How many times do you dip your tempura in sauce?
None?
Spoons of sugar in your yogurt?
0.
What do you write on your meals with ketchup?
A blank.
Any sauce on your konomiyaki?
Plain.
Do you salt your rice balls?
Just rice.
What syrup do you get on your shaved ice?
Simple.
How many sugar cubes in your aftermeal coffee?
I take mine black. Thank you. Okay, she said, ending her questions. It felt like I had just undergone some sort of psychological test, but I did understand now what was making her so upset. Oh, I get it. I'm sorry, Miss Senjogahara. You're one of those people who puts dressing on their salads, and that's why you were making such a funny face.
No, it's that I didn't know there was a no dressing faction. And it's my first time seeing a plain fried egg, and it's also my first time being served just a piece of bread. Are you, let's say, someone who rejects the idea of seasoning food? Perhaps you want to savor the ingredients as they are.
Hun, it isn't like that at all. I think salad tastes just as good with dressing on it, and I can eat fried eggs all the same even if they do have Worcestershire sauce, soy sauce, or salt and pepper on them, and I love pizza just the same with or without pineapple on it.
We're not talking about pizza toppings.
I was so happy. My setup hadn't been for nothing. But doesn't food taste good even if it doesn't have any flavor?
And there we have it. The clincher.
What? But all I said is that food's the same whether or not it has flavor.
So this is why they say the best way to get a secret out of someone is to ask them how their day went.
Though I guess all I did was ask you directly, she added, putting down her chopsticks. She hadn't given up on her meal, though. It was very much like her to have cleaned her plate.
Thank you for the meal. I take back every word I said about the two of us having similar tastes. You're like the opposite of a picky eater, aren't you? But it's not that you don't have dislikes either.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand what you're trying to say.
The taste of home cooking, huh? But no, it's not like that. Maybe you're someone who accepts the taste of anything. It might be an exaggeration, but you only care that your food provides you with nutrition. No, maybe nutrition doesn't even matter so long as you filled your stomach. In that case, your sense of taste is only a burden. If you aren't enjoying the flavor of the ingredients, then, in the end, you aren't bothered by trivial details. When I think about it, being fixated on how something is seasoned might be a luxury.
Still, you did manage to smash straight through what I believe to be common sense, she said, staring straight at me as my portion sat on my plate.
But you know, I'm not so sure about living that way. It's not just how you deal with food. You accept everything that comes to you, don't you? It's important to have things you love, but isn't it just about as important to have things you hate? But you accept it all. And I wonder if that's what you're doing with me and with Aragai too.
Did our conversation change subjects? Did our conversation get derailed? Did our conversation just turn into something bigger? No, it hadn't. We were on the same subject and we hadn't been derailed. The scale of our conversation was the same too. We were talking about how I lived my life. Tsubasa Hanekawa's lifestyle.
It wasn't that we have similar tastes. My tastes are simply subsumed by yours, no? Maybe I shouldn't call what you have tastes, Miss Hanekawa. It's probably better that I don't. After all, if you like everything that's out there, it's like everything is all the same to you. Miss Hanekawa, did you really love our Aragi? Are you still able to say, now, that you love our Aragi?
Miss Senjogahara and I both actually meant to attend school that day. But just before we left, we realized that she wouldn't be able to for a whole week thanks to the unnecessarily big lie she'd told the day before, namely that she had the flu.
This is what they call being hoist by your own petard. Now I have to stay here at home like a good girl for a whole week. I can't believe it. I've been grounded when I haven't done anything wrong.
However funny this turn of events seemed to me, it seemed to be a grave situation for our perpetrator who now had her hands to her head. Of course, lying absolutely counts as doing something wrong, so this could safely be classified as chickens coming home to roost. Or maybe the fowl are getting caught in her own net.
My dad's going to be so mad at me.
She, a girl in her last year of high school, appeared to be afraid of her father being upset with her. It was so cute. But it seems Aragi won't be able to come to school for a while either, so maybe it works out just right.
You've got a point.
What a pair of lovebirds! And so I went to school all alone, where a whirlwind of questions awaited me, though I'd expected it. They had a bit of a curious, gawking bent to them, but that couldn't be helped. I was happy that my classmates were concerned about me. Classes had now started for me. As I flipped through the textbooks I'd borrowed from Miss Senjogahara, who'd lent them to me, saying, "It's not like I can use them for a week," I thought back to something else she'd said that morning. You know, I'd always thought that the world must look so bland to people as smart as you, that because you understand so much of it, nothing's exciting or thrilling. But I might have been only half right about that and wrong about the other half. There was never any guarantee that you and I interpreted what it means to be bland in the same way. Yes, my very premise was faulty. I didn't imagine anyone could be fine with tediousness, and even crappiness, said Miss Senjogahara. How could I not give a panicked reply to that? No, I'd never thought that the world is bland. And I don't like tediousness and I think crappiness is bad. I wonder, Something makes me suspect that you're just saying so, or rather just thinking so. She wouldn't accept my defense. Actually, I've been wondering for a while what the difference is between you and Araragi. Both of you are willing to do anything for the sake of others, even putting yourselves at risk. But from where I stand, the two of you seem completely different. You don't even seem to resemble each other. To put it simply, Aragi looks fake, while you look like the real deal. It made me wonder why, especially because your behavior is the same. But I think I understand now after eating this meal you cooked. Of course, claiming that I understand someone's temperament because I ate their food makes it sound like I'm in a cooking manga that will go unnamed, she said. It sounds like I'm in Oishinbo. Why go back and provide the title you just censored? You and Aragi understand danger in different ways. For example, if there's a cat that's been run over in the middle of the street, giving it a proper burial is probably the right thing to do. I think you would. And while he'd moan and groan about it, Araragi might too at the end of the day. And I think the difference here is that moaning and groaning. The reason so many people would ignore a dead cat run over in the middle of the street, passing by as if they didn't see it at all, is that it's dangerous to bury it. It's extremely risky in our society for people around you to know that you're a good or virtuous person. It becomes extremely likely that people will start to take advantage of you. At some point, children intentionally start to act bad because they think it's embarrassing to do good, but it's not really because they're embarrassed. It's because such goodness is nothing more than a weak point, a liability amidst the malice out there in the world. Miss Senjo Gahara thought out loud. She continued to lay out her unique theory. Araji probably knows it's safer to act bad. He knows just how much of a risk he's taking by being a good person. Again and again, he's acted like some defender of justice, knowing there's a chance he could die in the process, or at least fall by the wayside. When he was in middle school, and now that he's in high school, too. That's the reason he ended up washing out, but I think he always understood the risk that he might. He's doing it even though he knows. Well, maybe not the risk of dying and then coming back to life like during spring break, but that aside. Spring break? That time he did regret it. He definitely regretted his actions then. But he definitely faced those regrets. There was no mistaking it, and Miss Senjo Gahara was exactly right. Me, on the other hand, you, on the other hand, don't understand any of that. No, that's not it. Even you must be aware of those risks. But you don't think they're anything to be worried about. That must be what it is. You don't regret anything. It's like you don't find the malice and crappiness daunting. No, actually, you accept it. This all sounds like I'm describing just how incredible you are. But that's not it at all. I had an incredible amount of respect for you until today. But it's as if those feelings just vanished into thin air. Indeed, the sense I got from Miss Senjo Gahara as she spoke was that she wasn't praising me at all. It wasn't high praise in the least. If anything, she was mad. Just like when she discovered me sleeping in those ruins yesterday morning, or possibly madder. I'm pretty hurt you said my cooking tasted good if that's how you feel. Araraji didn't show any signs of enjoying it, but you're even worse. For example, what do you think about the way I live? With that question, she spread her arms to present room 201 of the Tamakura apartments. My shaky single-father household, my single-room apartment of 100 or so square feet, no bathtub but saved so fortunately by my shower that sometimes has no hot water. My truly meager kitchen with only a single gas burner, my circuit breaker that trips if you use a hairdryer while running the washing machine. What do you think about my lifestyle? What do I think about it, do you? You don't think anything about it, do you? You don't sympathize with the way I live or recoil from it, do you? And I'm sure that's a wonderful thing. If we were in a novel or a manga or something, that is. Or if we were talking about great historical figures, yes, that would be incredible. But, Miss Hanekawa, you're a real human being, aren't you? She put to me. While her tone remained flat, she seemed to be holding herself back with all she had, so it wouldn't get away from her and turn rough. After all, even I think this way of living is the worst. And this is about me. I don't believe, like some enlightened person, that this is a far more human life than the one in the mansion prior to my parents' divorce. There's no way I could. I don't think for a second there's anything more human about living in poverty. In fact, I agree with the saying poverty dulls the wit. My father is working himself to the bone to repay our debts and get us out of this life. He's working so frantically that I wouldn't be surprised if his health failed any day now, and it's all because we know how dangerous it is for us to continue living this way. But you don't feel that kind of danger, she said. You realize that the danger is there, but you don't feel a shred of it. That's why you're able to spend a whole night in those ruins. When you put it that way, I was cornered. I couldn't argue back even if I wanted to.
Monogatari series by Nisio is in cast by Artale Studio. If you are interested in creating your own audiobooks, please check out our website, artale.ai. Now, enjoy the story.
T think it's that you're too white, too pure and white. You must not understand how heartless it is to tell foolish people it's okay to be foolish, how cruel it is to tell crappy people it's okay to be crappy. And you don't even attempt to understand why seeing defects and calling them virtues is sheer malice. You don't have a clue about how irreversibly damaging it is to affirm something that's negative. You can't accept everything. If you did, no one would bother trying anymore. They'd lose the will to improve. But you aren't the least bit wary of foolishness or crappiness. You always run straight off to do the right thing knowing that people are going to try to take advantage of you. Because you don't pay the fact any mind, and you try to act ethically even though you know it makes you stick out like a sore thumb. What could be more frightening than that? I'm impressed that you've managed to live your life on such a razor's edge and still be in sound health, I'll give you that. So in conclusion, you're not a good person. You're not a saint. You're not a holy mother. You're just dull when it comes to darkness. That just makes you a failure as a creature.
A failure. It was the first time anyone had called me that, and it was a little depressing to hear. We cut the conversation short there because it was almost time for me to go to school, but her words continued to swirl around in my head while I was on my way and all during class too. You're not a good person, just dull when it comes to darkness. Just dull when it comes to darkness. A failure, a failure, a failure, in other words. White, too white. Pure and white, transparently white. But now that I was in class and distracted by the doodles in the margins of Miss Senjo Gahara's textbooks, I couldn't deny feeling that those words felt a bit in vain. There were FMA drawings on every single page. They were ridiculously good, too. And she was preparing for college? Miss Senjo Gahara probably felt frustrated. I ended up not understanding half of what she'd said and what she'd wanted to say, but that was still the impression I got. It really was just an impression. It was nothing more. Lunch came around, and I left the classroom and headed to the cafeteria. I usually pack my own lunch, but I wasn't going to use someone else's kitchen for that. No, I probably wouldn't feel like making lunch in any kitchen, even the one in my own house after being told all of those things by Miss Senjo Gahara. My own house! Would I too have made flavorful food if I actually had... When... I saw a familiar figure in front of me after I'd walked a ways down the halls. It was Suruba Kanbaro. She was walking from there to here in the opposite direction as me. She really did seem like a cheerful person just from the way she walked. Even from my distance, I could tell she was humming some kind of tune. And she noticed me at the same time. She exclaimed louder than you'd ever expect in a hallway, then dashed over to my side faster than you'd ever expect in a hallway. She moved so fast, it was like she'd teleported. 2 tassels of hair arrived a moment later.
Well, look who it is! It's been a while. Glad to see you're doing well.
Yeah. She was awfully excited. This was more than being upbeat. I could only nod, not sure how to react. Judging from her demeanor, the news of the Hanekawa residence burning down had somehow yet to reach her. Then again, given her personality, there was a chance that she could be this excited even if it had. Good manners, zero consideration, that was her personality.
T was actually on my way to go see my dear senior Senjo Gahara, but is she in her classroom right now?
It was hardly surprising. It went without saying. At least I hadn't thought that dashing over my way the way she did meant that she had some kind of urgent business with me, generally speaking. She was only interested in Miss Senjo Gahara. It was to the point that she applied to our school, Naoatsu High, in order to follow Miss Senjo Gahara here. Arawaji seemed to have somehow broadened her frighteningly narrow horizons, but, well, I envied how straightforward she could be. Or maybe I should say single-minded. At the very least, I doubted Miss Senjo Gahara would look at her and feel frustrated. She was strong, reliable. That would be the impression. Suruga Kanbaru, a second-year student at Naoitsu High. Miss Senjo Bahara's junior since middle school, which meant that she also went to the same middle school as me, but I never met her then. I'd only heard stories about her. The two together are called the Valhalla Duo. The Valhalla Duo, from the character for God in Kanbaru, the characters for Battleground in Senjogahara, and the character for Field in both of their names, which could be read both Baro, and Hara. I later learned that Miss Kanbara was apparently the one to come up with a moniker herself. While I did think it was a cool name, there was something sad about it when I learned that. Also, she's the best-known student in all of Naoitsu High. At a private prep school that places no focus whatsoever on sports and club activities, she led its girls' basketball team to the national tournament. She's an awe-inspiring superstar. While they'd never admit it, the faculty seems a little annoyed. As in, won't she read the room? Of course, as you could tell by the bandage wrapped around her left arm, she'd retired early. A monkey. For Miss Kanbaro, it was a monkey, I want to say. But even so, I think. While she'd sported an athlete's short, boyish haircut as an active player, the girl in front of me had hair almost as long as mine used to be, though she didn't braid it. Putting aside the fact that her hair grew at a supernatural speed, Miss Kambaru looked girlish, you could say. She looked cute now. And what got her to do that, like with the way Miss Senjogahara was now, must have been our of. She's taking the day off from school. She's sick with the flu. I'd become a party to her lie, but what else could I do? If we looked back at the circumstances, she'd lied for my sake. I had to make sure our stories were straight. Even if it was fine to tell Miss Kanbari, she struck me as someone with loose lips. She was so candid that it felt like whatever she wasn't supposed to say could slip out of her mouth at any moment, and I couldn't see her feeling bad about it afterwards either. She wouldn't even try to defend herself because she couldn't see anyone taking offense.
The flu, that's like the devil getting sunstroke?
It was an awful way to talk about her dear senior, an excellent example of her showing good manners, and zero consideration, in fact, of her being politely rude, as Araragi put it. She was probably just using a phrase she'd heard somewhere, though, and I doubted she ever stopped to consider its meaning. I'm sure Aragi would interrupt the conversation with a quip here to correct her, but I wasn't that close to her. All I could do was reply with silence and a vague smile. Corinne!
Underscore comma dot wait comma, maybe that means something else?
She'd understood. That made me honestly happy. I still had to admit it was difficult to figure out where I stood with people who were friends of friends, whether via Miss Senjogahara or Araragi. A big part of it was that I was dealing with Miss Kambara, though.
I see. So she's not here. What should I do?
I was sure she'd turn around and go back to her classroom once she learned Miss Senjogahara was absent, but instead she stood there with her arms folded like she was at a real loss. The cafeterians would get crowded with our school's cafeterians if I didn't hurry, but I couldn't leave her in that state. Did you have something you needed to tell her? I'd be happy to listen if I could be of any help.
Well, I guess you do.
Now she was just being rude. Not even politely so.
T just got a message from my dear senior Aragi.
Silenced me by shoving her phone screen in front of my face. We weren't allowed to use our phones on school grounds. They were supposed to be off while at school. The words "just got a message" implied that she received his email during class. All of these were more words I found suppressed. By the message I was seeing, Dash, come to second floor classroom tonight at 9 alone. I need to ask you something.
What do you think this means?
What else could it mean? Such a short message didn't leave any room for interpretation. It didn't even seem possible that it was in some sort of code. Yes, the text was a bit sloppy, the alone was misplaced, but that only meant he was in a rush. TT means that Araragi has a question for you, and that he wants you to come alone to the second floor classroom tonight at 9 in the evening. No?
So my hunch was right, term. I presume he isn't at school today either?
Yep. I nodded. She was sharp in unexpected ways, or rather she had the uncanny ability to pin down the gist of a conversation and wasn't to be underestimated. In his case, it's not like he has the flu, but he hasn't come to school ever since the new term started. I'd asked our teacher just to be sure, but it seemed that he hadn't attended the day before either. Miss Senjogahara, Aragi, and I had all missed school on the same day. which apparently sparked a bunch of groundless speculation. Groundless speculation. Wish they'd stop. Please don't spark anything.
I know he's my senior, but sometimes I don't know what to do with him. The second floor classroom? That's way too vague to be a meeting spot. How many buildings does he think Naotsuhai has?
Well, I don't think he means our school. It has to be that abandoned cram school, right?
Oh, I see.
She agreed as if she just realized she was dull in unexpected ways.
But if that's the case, why doesn't he just call me? I tried calling him several times just now, but he wouldn't pick up.
Miss Kanbaru had made these calls at school, and my silence here was of course not to scold her for that. It was because this new info made it absolutely impossible for me to imagine the kind of situation Araragi was in. I thought it had something to do with Mayoi, but why would he summon Miss Kanbaru? It didn't make sense.
So, he's inviting me on a date! And he must not be picking up the phone because he has some kind of surprise ready.
Doesn't the way it's written make it sound more serious? A surprise. How happy-go-lucky was she? And she wasn't kidding either. Just talking to her was exhausting.
Okay, all right, now I understand. I had a book I wanted to read tonight, but if he's inviting me out, there's only one thing for me to do. Answer his call, come hell or high water.
Hell or high water? She just wanted to read a book, right? She was blowing everything far out of proportion, and her old-timey phrases made her more likely to sound like she was joking the more serious she got. She was losing out thanks to that quirk. Perhaps it didn't make her frustrating, but her earnestness really was concerning. Miss Combo...
What is it?
I thought about what to say, but I couldn't find the right words in the end and settled on nothing but... Be careful. Say hi to Aragi for me.
Oh! Thank you for everything.
No, not at all. You're welcome.
When I heard that your house caught on fire, I thought you might be feeling down, but I'm glad that doesn't seem to be the case. There's the senior I know.
Oh. So she actually did know. She knew, and that was how she approached me. For reals, no. But still, I wasn't feeling down.
May fortune be with you on the battlefield.
Raising a hand, Miss Kanbaru returned the way she came. Not running, but walking. I was planning on warning her if she started running down the hallways again, but it wasn't as if she always ran everywhere she went. She was annoyingly random. Now that Miss Kanbaro had left, I needed to hurry to the cafeteria and in part to make up for lost time, if I were actually doing so, but was unable to move a step. Not because her last line still echoed inside me. What was gripping my mind instead was Araragi's present situation. He had to be in some sort of trouble. That much was already a definite fact, but he wanted Miss Kanbara to come see him, which probably meant that whatever he needed to ask her was necessary to escaping the crisis. Only, it didn't feel like he was simply seeking assistance. It felt far, far more serious. That's why it seemed misguided.
Araragi had texted her out of some necessity and was requesting her help rather than mine, so dwelling on that fact was misguided.
But I wondered, although understanding this perfectly and being satisfied was what Miss Senjagahara found so frustrating about me, it still didn't sit well with me to be called pure and white for it. I did envy Miss Kanbaro for getting that message from Araragi. I was properly mad too. Araragi hadn't texted. I headed home while being assaulted by a powerful sense of self-hatred. I considered asking Miss Kanbara if I could go with her, but if Araragi's message said alone, it seemed best that I understood that much. What did give me pause was whether or not I should tell Miss Senjogahara about this. The honest way to look at it was that I should Araragi being her boyfriend, but I knew I'd absolutely cause her worry, and on her part she'd get unreservedly angry at him. I arrived at the Temakura apartment still unable to reach a conclusion.
Oh, welcome back, Miss Hanekawa. That took a while.
Yeah, I went to the supermarket to buy ingredients to replace what I used this morning. Then, as I opened the door, I noticed that there was another individual in the room other than Miss Senjogahara. A man with long salt and pepper hair tied neatly in the back. He looked striking in his suit and as serious as could be. To use a bit of an old phrase, he was like a corporate warrior. His appearance suggested professions like lawyer or bureaucrat, but I knew that wasn't the case. I'd heard from Miss Senjogahara that her father works as a consultant at a foreign company.
Nice to meet you.
He greeted me first. He was seated at the low table but got up for me and bowed his head.
I'm Hitagi's father.
I was at a loss. Now that this was happening, I realized she'd said her father was coming home today. I just didn't think he'd be returning at such an early hour. He doesn't work at a foreign company for nothing and won't let himself be bound by time, I thought, weirdly impressed. I'm Tsubasa Hanekawa. I apologize I stayed the night yesterday. Mr. Senjogahara nodded, and then he was silent again. He seemed reserved. He struck me as the type of man who stayed extremely quiet as I stood there in the entrance, my shoes still on, when he glanced my way.
I'll make some tea.
He headed to the kitchen. From there, he put a kettle on the gas burner. His words, along with his actions, freed me from my nerves in an instant, and I could take my shoes off at least. A pause. I sat next to Miss Senjogahara, making sure to keep her dad in my line of sight.
Tim sorry, Miss Hanekawa. He seems to have taken care of his work earlier than expected, and so he also came back earlier than expected.
Oh, no. It's not a problem or anything. But in that case, you could have sent me a message or called me to let me know.
Well, I was curious to see if you'd be surprised.
Yes, I was. Of course I was. When I began to wonder whether these kinds of surprises awaited Araragi daily, his life started to seem like a lot of trouble in spite of its sunny appearance. You have a very cool dad. And not as flattery. It made a little more sense now. Putting aside how serious she was being when she said it, I could see why Miss Senjogahara might be a self-described daddy's girl living with the father like that would surely make every boy in your class look like a kid. I had mixed feelings about the thought, but it was impressive that Araragi managed to win over her trained eye. You often hear that women fall in love with a man who resembles her father, but in that sense the person preparing tea leaves at the moment was nothing like Araragi. Forget about them being different types of people. They nearly seemed to be made of different stuff. Araragi could play at being cool and collected. He could even be called the unmoving silence. But the truth is that he rather likes talking. You could almost call him the polar opposite of Miss Senjogahara's dad, an actual reserved individual. And though this is an incredibly tautological way to put it, while Mr. Senjogahara was indeed cool, there was something so fatherly about him. Like he was more cool as a dad than cool as a man. And what that indicates... Oops. Why am I even trying to analyze my friend's dad? I thought I already stopped doing that kind of thing. Yes, it seemed that I of all people was slightly shaken by a dad appearing out of the blue. Not that anything about me is special enough to warrant the of all people. An ordinary girl I may not be, but even then, there was nothing to be shaken by to begin with. It's not as if I had any mental image of what a father or dad is. I may know a person who should be called my father, but what I didn't know was the person I ought to call my father. I didn't know anything.
Anything interesting happen at school?
What do you mean by that?
Was Aragi there?
So that's what she wanted to ask. I hesitated for a moment, but it felt wrong to hide it. I decided to tell her what happened at school.
He texted Kambaru?
Yes, he seems to need her help with whatever's keeping him occupied at the moment. But it was so short that we couldn't figure out why he was summoning her.
How unbearably unpleasant.
Her words, surprisingly direct, were mirrored by her expression. Direct was actually an understatement. She was furious. What's more, she was angry at Miss Kanbari, not Aragi. Her ire was pointed at her junior, not her boyfriend. I immediately found myself regretting telling her. Was it going to create a rift between the Valhalla?
That woman got Araragi to ignore me and seek her help instead.
What should I do to her? Starting with her organs, starting with her organs.
Miss Senjogahara, you've gone back to being your pre-rehabilitated self.
Uh-oh.